there'll be a moment for silent prayer and meditation. Please take your seats. Secretary, please read the first order of the day. Order.
Debate on Heritage Day, celebrating 20 years of democracy. Tell your story that moves South Africa forward.
Thank you. Honorable members, I have the pleasure to invite the Honorable Minister for Arts and Culture, the Honorable Mthethwa.
Kanjani manje? Thank you, Chairperson of National Council of Provinces, honorable members of the National Assembly of the NCOP, colleagues, ministers and deputy ministers, honorable MECs here present, ladies and gentlemen, and comrades and friends. This month, we remember the assassination of the King of Zulu Nation, Shaka. Udlungwane kandaba wadlunga emanxulumeni. Kwaze kwasama amanxulume esibekelana. Usala kutshela usala kunyenyezelo. The theme for this Heritage Month is celebrating 20 years of democracy. Tell your story that moves South Africa forward. We strongly encourage all South Africans to take the opportunity to reflect on the significant life-changing transformation that South Africa has been experiencing since the dawn of our democracy. It is also indeed true that various sectors of our society have a positive story to tell about the progress made since 1994, promoting and preserving the heritage of this country. The transformation of the colonial heritage landscape is one of the biggest challenges we face today. In fact, redefining the soul of this nation, defining new identity and building new monuments, heritage sites to honor our legitimate historical figures should rally all of us together. At some fringe corners, we have met resistance. Thus, we have wrestled in court with some fellow South Africans who presumably should have known or should know where we come from, where we're going to. It is time we make it clear what we mean by heritage in this beautiful land that far too many cannot yet enjoy because of the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. At the center of the debate about heritage is the contestation between two cultural forces which have shaped the character and identity of South Africa that we live in today. The colonial cultural landscape on the one hand, and the struggle of a new African heritage landscape on the other. The colonial and apartheid cultural landscape have tried but failed to wipe off the African heritage that existed before 1652. Our languages and indigenous African knowledge systems, customs and traditions, amongst others, continue to exist. As Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o has aptly captured it, and I quote, African critically imbibed values that were alien and had no immediate relevance to her people. The richness of Africa's cultural heritage degraded and her people labeled as primitive and savage, close quote. The advent of Western imperialism and cultural domination has over 3 centuries certainly co-opted and created opportunities for Africans who were willing to turn their backs on their African identity, culture, and heritage. We define our heritage as the dreams of our visionaries, leaders, and intellectuals who went before us. In fact, we who live today stand at the vast pyramid of African self-determination and struggle, slowly but surely accumulated through the many long struggles against colonialism and apartheid. We are the living link, the African heritage that they have ever dreamed of, thought about, fought and died for. Today, when we face what is probably the greatest challenge humankind has ever known, to give the world a human face, or Ubuntu, it is very important to draw a distinction between history and heritage. The two terms are misunderstood, confused, and sometimes used interchangeably. History is the remembrance, recording, or account of everything that has happened in the past. The colonial prism has over-determined how we look at Anglo-Boer War of 1899 to 1902, for example, where over 21,000 African women and children in concentration camps were blind-spotted out of history deliberately. In fact, there is nothing called Anglo-Boer War, and this was South African War. But not all history is heritage. For heritage is principles, ideas, personalities, and institutions that we consciously select to transmit from the past because they have helped move us forward. We cannot consider the history of violent oppression, dispossession, land loss, prejudice, and exclusion of fellow human beings as part of our heritage to be celebrated. Thus, we choose to define our heritage as visionary pronouncements that have helped us move forward, as envisioned by that great son of the soil, Pixley Isaka Seme, in his award-winning oratory work in 1906 on the regeneration of Africa, and the call he made for the unity of Africans in October 1911, amongst others. This vision was further elaborated in the document African Claims of 1943, the Freedom Charter of 1955, the Constitutional Guidelines for a New Democratic South Africa of 1989, the Harare Declaration of 1989, and culminated in the pledges of the world-renowned Constitution of the Republic of South Africa as we know it. Sihlalo, umthetho-sisekelo wezwe uyacacisa ukubaluleka kwezilimi zethu zomdabu ekuvikelweni kwamagugu namasiko ethu. Umbhalo uNgugi wa Thiong'o uqhuba athi, ngimcaphule, kukhona izinto ezithile abomdabu abangeke bakwazi ukuzichaza ngezilimi zezifika namthwalo, ezichazeka kuphela ngokujula nokuceba kwezilimi zethu. Konke lokhu kungenza ngiqinisekise ukuthi ukuthuthukiswa kwezilimi zethu yikho okuyokwenza ukuthi iphupho lokuvuselelwa kwezwekazi iAfrika lifezeke. Lo mbhalo ubuye abonise ulwazi olunqala ngezwe lakithi eNingizimu Afrika lapho ephawula ngezinga eliphezulu lababhali bakwaDlomo, uHIE nomnewabo uRRR, bengcweka njengezingcubabuchopho ngokubaluleka kolimi lomdabu. Omncane wasemakhabeleni uHIE ebeka ukubaluleka kokusetshenziswa kwezilimi zasentshonalanga, kanti umnewabo uRRR eqhakambisa ulimi aluncela ebeleni kunina. Enye yezingqalabutho zababhali bakithi, uSEK Mqhayi, eyaziwa kakhulu, eyayizazisa kakhulu izilimi zomdabu ngokusetshenziswa kwazo, yayinembono efanayo nekaNgugi. Encwadini yakhe Ityala Lamawele ukhombisa ikhono lomdabu ekuxazululeni kwezinkinga esibhekene nazo. Lento ichaza ukuthi izinga kumbe izinkinga zethu thina bomtsinso okuzimilela ziyaxazululeka ngendlela yethu uma nje sizinika isineke. Sikhumbuza ke amalungu alendlu yesishayamthetho ukuthi nonyaka sihlanganisa ikhulu leminyaka umbhali uMqhayi abhala incwadi yakhe Ityala Lamawele. The value of languages. The value of languages is what has motivated us to intervene to resolve what is happening there, which is a crisis and an impasse in Pan-South African Language Board as part of our task. Cultural and traditional practices are intrinsic to creating a new language of symbolism in an emerging democracy. As much as we have moved with speed to transform national symbols, it was necessary to create new symbols to help foster new cultural practices associated with the burgeoning democracy. The new national anthem is potent with the symbolism of reconciling previously irreconcilable anthems. It supports a new practice in South Africa of reconciliation. Also, the conceptualization and the design of the new national coat of arms as well as popular national flag have a rich, beautifully textured meaning and symbolism that is all-embracing of our heritage. And the theme for this year, as the theme for this year says, the stories of the legendary figures and all our people will be used to examine ideological issues and to situate their personal choices and sacrifices within the ongoing struggle for truly just and equal society. We can only understand ourselves when we know who we are and where we come from. Above all, we must know who our real heroes are. The narratives of these outstanding individuals have laid the foundation not only for our heritage, but also to inspire all of us, especially the youth, to do and say what will move South Africa forward. The individual sites and monuments that have been identified and built over the last 20 years have been introduced because they were subjected to a certain types of cruelty or oppression in their efforts to bring about change. They are part of our larger movement towards a just and equal society. The renaming of Johannesburg International Airport to O.R. Tambo International Airport is quite significant and has such symbolism, only to be paralleled by the likes of JFK International Airport in New York, Charles de Gaulle in Paris, and this is a fitting tribute for a colossus of our revolution. Think of a larger-than-life statue of former President Nelson Mandela at the Union Building lawns, the symbolism of the triumph of the human spirit in Robben Island, the erection of the statue of Inkosi Bambata in Greytown, and the refurbishment of the Wesleyan Church in Vryhoek, amongst others. Thus, we provide resources for the refurbishment of Bear Snode and Rahina Musa's graves, the revamp of Bram Fisher in Free State and John Dube's homes in KwaZulu-Natal. This is essential aspect to the program of the celebration of our heroes and heroines and the retelling of our stories. It speaks to an important agenda of memorizing and decolonizing of our identity and heritage. Let us underscore our commitment to building a National Heroes Acre whose work is underway as a tribute to the heroes and heroines of our people from the pre-colonial era to the liberation heritage. The theme for this year has been chosen to mark an important milestone in our achievements and to mark a turning point. All our people have stories to tell. We are determined to give an opportunity to make a distinction between history and heritage, and at the same time reconcile with his heroic figures as they shape the new identity. We will start celebrating Africa Month next year with our compatriots, our brothers and sisters in the continent and in the diaspora, through the sharing of our arts, culture, heritage, and other genres of humanity's fountain of wisdom. Cultural determination occurs when a people use their imagination to create positive images that portray their true selves and striving for their own goals. Over the last 3 centuries, the African entire way of looking at the world was determined by colonialists. In decolonizing the mind, Ngugi says, and I quote, "The economic control of the African people was effected through politics and culture. Economic and political control of a people can never be complete without cultural control," close quote. Thus, we have embarked on a radical socio-economic transformation program to empower people with important tools to produce content that reflects their creativity. This will make them keepers of memory of our society. And in conclusion, we borrow the words of poet Amos Césaire in his poem, Return to My Native Land, when he says, and I quote, "No race possesses the monopoly of beauty, of intelligence, of freedom. There is a place for all at the rendezvous of victory." We end by saying, our heritage should belong to all of us. Our heritage is our pride as South Africans. Tell your story that moves South Africa forward. And I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The Honorable Balindlela.
Honorable Speaker, lo uthethayo ngusomlomo welizwe elitsha elizayo. Our heritage does not only consist of valued objects, ezindizingqinelayo nakumphathiswa wethu othethileyo ngazo, i-buildings, i-natural wonders of our country, i-cultural traditions, diyangqina mphathiswa ngokwenene, zibalulekile ezondo. Kodwa namhlanje mna ndingumama walapha ndifuna ukuthetha about the beautiful legacy of the heritage left to us by our elders. Bonke abangamakhalipha esizwe angasekhoyo nala asekhoyo endibala kuwo ke igqala obekikileyo utata uNkosi Buthelezi, yena usadla inkobe. Okwaziyo ukuthi kuye kuthi hayi apha athi kuthi ewe phaya. So singamangqina akho ke tata Buthelezi kulendlu ibalulekileyo. I think we can also agree that we should increase all these efforts, save the rhino, save our natural heritage, vibrant places to be protected. Zonke zibalulekile mphathiswa ndinqinelana nawe tatam. But our most important legacy will be ensuring that our traditions, practices, and beliefs are permeated with the values of respect, dignity, and freedom. Honorable Speaker, culture is not static. The customs and beliefs that we inherited from our forefathers should constantly be re-evaluated to determine if we want them to form part of the legacy we want to leave our children with. But this is not always an easy task. I want to mention some formidable women who challenged the norms of their time and who bequeathed to us a better world and richer heritage. South African writer Olive Schreiner, who died in 1920, was not a woman who would be constrained by the practices and beliefs of her time. At the beginning of the Victorian era, in which Schreiner grew up, women did, amongst other injustices, not have the right to vote, but she became a spokeswoman for the feminist cause. She was also a campaigner for pacifist causes, anti-imperialism, and the rights of black servants. And she was also right when she said, and I quote, "There was never a great man who had not a great mother." One of these great mothers, Umama Umambeki, owancama ubomi bakhe bonke elwela ukuthi omama nabantwana amakhosikazi nawo akhululeke ngokwa ombanga omhle. And within this parliamentary precinct, masikhumbuleni wayelapha umama uHelen Suzman for 36 years. 36 years. 13 of them, the only member of a party fighting and fighting against the governing National Party's policies of apartheid. Even after the ANC was elected to government, she continued to speak out against abuses of women. I therefore would like to celebrate the legacy of such women who, despite the challenging societies they lived in, managed to contribute so richly to our heritage. We owe it to them, Bandakwethu. We cannot go backwards, yet the ANC insists on bringing the legislation to Parliament that will not improve the lives of our women. The Traditional Courts Bill would have enforced controversial version of customary law that infringe upon women's constitutional rights. The Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill would have done nothing for the most vulnerable women of this country. Women have continually been undermined with regards to land ownership and in some instances have been disempowered to rightfully own land due to the chiefs or leaders of their communities, forcing them out in the case of communal land ownership. Due to the dysfunctional Department of Women, Children and People with Disabilities, it seems as if the new Ministry for Women basically has to start from scratch. Ndaye ndiyamkhuthaza la minister. Ndiyamkhuthaza kakhulu ngoba ndiyambona izingqi zakhe azifani nezayizolo. Uzawusilungiselela ezi zinto sifuna zilungise. One example of such inequality is the practice of ukuthwala. Nam ndake ndayiphantsi uyifumana le nto le yokuthwalwa kodwa ke utata wam wayestrongo. Baninzi ke ngoku ekufuneka sibakhusele. Our generation should take up the challenges of inequality and gender discrimination. Section 9 of our Constitution guarantees formal equality. In 2005, our Constitutional Court ruled that the state could not deny same-sex couples the ability to marry. However, the battle is not over. There are certain groups who want the removal of the lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and intersex rights from the Constitution, and we should challenge their background, their backward thinking at every opportunity. Honorable Speaker, corrective rape, 18-year-old girl, Gift Makau, brutally raped and murdered in Northwest. Only she is one of many women and men. We cannot let any form of homophobia stay part of our heritage. Of course, our cause is not helped when a national government minister walks out of an exhibition featuring photographs of nude lesbian couples because she found it immoral, I quote, and against nation building. Hayi madoda. Yiyo le nto kaloku sicelayo ndiyafuna ithi notata Nxamalala president. Ndikhe ndifumane ithuba lokhe ndincokole naye ngezimvo zakhe kwabo athi ngongqingqili isiZulu ke andisazi kodwa ke ngongqindili mina ukuba ngabantu ke abangamadoda anjalo. The legacy that we leave will become the heritage of our future generation. Changing attitudes and belief is not easy. Every South African should do their part to leave a legacy, no matter how big or small. I have encouraged young women like Babalwa, Alfina, Xoliswa, Sipokazi, Goodman, and Dileka to complete their computer literacy courses and to empower themselves by obtaining their driver's licenses. They will now be in a position to empower others, and that should be part of the legacy we leave behind. Let us build our South Africa. This is my story that moves South Africa forward.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Your time has expired, Honourable Member. The Honourable Morapela. Order, members.
Motsamaisi wa dipuisano ya hlomphehileng. Ha ke lebohe monyetla le sebaka ke dumedise mmoho le maloko a kopaneng a ntlo ena e hlomphehileng ka jeno lena. Botjhaba le setso sa rona ke dintho tse bohlokwa haholo ho motho e mong le e mong ya phelang tlasa kgwedi le letsatsi. Ke ntho e pepeneneng hore moetlo ha o ya baneng wa fela. Mme lebaka ke hore re iphumana re se re hapilwe ke botjhaba ba mafatshe a mang. Naheng ena ya rona re iphumana re sa phonyoha le rona. Mme ha re sa itseba hore hantlentle hore re bo mang. Sena o se bona ka mokgwa o re se re phedisanang ka teng ka ona re le maAfrika. Thuto ya baholo ba rona eo ba re sietseng yona re e lahlile. Re se re phela sekgowa haholo. Mme hona ho etsa hore ditaba tsa rona tsa maAfrika di be thata haholo. Taba ya lefatshe, taba ke ena. Lefatshe la rona, botjhaba ba rona. Ke maswabisa dihlong hore lemong tse 20 pusong eo e reng ke ya batho ka batho. Ebe bongata bo ntse bo phela bo sena lefatshe moo ba ka iphedisang teng. Haholo jwang ka mora hore setjhaba sa Rantsho se sotlakakwe ke makgowa ka ho bankela lefatshe la bona ka kgang. Baeso, hopolang hore madi a ile a tsholoha. Batho ba ile ba shwa ba nkela tsohle tse leng tsa bona. Ke hobaneng re le lesisitheo hakana ho bona hore batho ba bo rona ba fumantshwa lefatshe mme ba tseba ho iphedisa. Our oceans, minerals and our land is our heritage. That must benefit the people of South Africa. We must deal away with privatization of these important endowments. Profit making through our heritage by monopoly capital must be fought with everything in our power. This is our land, it belongs to us. No white male rich who happens to control means of production should exploit and own the land at the expense of the people of South Africa, particularly blacks. It is quite shocking to see in 20 years into democracy, we are still surrounded by statues of apartheid representatives, people who caused a lot of pain to our people during difficult times. The government of today, which purports to represent the aspiration and the interest of our people, they are so disappointing that they even spend money to continue to erect statues of those people who were oppressing our people during difficult times. Tse tswang mobung ka tlase ho lefatshe, botjhaba ba rona. Re tletse ko sarelwa le ho phoqeha ka moo ditaba di leng ka teng. Mme hona ho etsa hore re hlobaele boroko ka moo Gauta, Taemane, Mashala le tse ding tse ngata di sa ruising maAfrika Borwa. Empa makapitale e ba bona ba una molemo ho tse tswang mobung wa rona. Basebeletsi ba di mine wa bona a ntse a sa ntlafala. Batho ba phela mo di mine di fumanehang teng ba ntse ba phela le ka thata ka jeno ya mmaka jeno. So re se bonang ke ho hloka sebete le thasello ho tswa ba mmusong kapa ba ka sehloohong ho nka diqeto tse ka etsang naha ya bo rona e tswelele pele moruong mme batho ba bo rona ba kgoletse molemo lefatsheng la bo bona. Ebe lebaka ke hore mmusong ba mmusong ba kgotsofetse ba ya ja mme ba bile ba jella lebitsong la ba fumanehileng. Motsamaiso wa dipuisano tsena ke dinnete tsa pale ya Afrika Borwa dilemong tse 20 re le mmusong wa setjhaba ka setjhaba ho ya ka mokgwa ho bolelwang ka teng. Honorable Speaker, it is our firm belief as economic freedom fighters that our heritage should place the interest of the people of this country first. Our culture and traditions must be placed at the same pedestal with other dominating Western cultures. Government must take keen interest to develop and promote African culture. Our arts and culture, our heritage, must help to grow our economy and benefit our people, particularly those that are highly involved in this industry. As things stand, our African artists seems to be at the receiving end. Their stories, music that they produce, and the performing arts do not get enough coverage. We are flooded by European stories that are not promoting Ubuntu in our communities, but promote Western culture and self-hatred amongst black people. Heritage should not be a curse to us as Africans. Our warriors fought many battles that when we look back, we must be proud of their deeds. They taught us to be courageous and uncompromising in fight for justice. In our struggle for economic freedom, we draw our inspiration from our ancestors, kings and queens, heroes and heroines. We draw our courage from Mushweshwe, Sikukuni, Hinta, Bambata, and Dingane. These African warriors, they promoted the spirit of Ubuntu amongst the African people. Unlike leaders of today, who have sold out our people, who are embroiled in scandals after scandals, hiding behind parliamentary processes to answer and take responsibility for their actions. This is what we are subjected to in South Africa of today. People who behave like demigods, untouchables, even when they've done wrong things, moral decaying that we see on daily basis. For those who supposed to provide leadership and direction, for those who supposed to uphold and embrace dignity, they continue to degenerate and represent moral decay. This is a sad story and a true story about South Africa today. Our people, they continue to live
Honorable Member.
under development. Our people continue to suffer.
Honorable Member.
Let their land benefit
time has
them.
expired.
We need the land to benefit our people. Ke a leboha.
Ke a leboga ntate. The Honorable Dlamini.
Angibonge kakhulu, Honorable Chairperson.
Order, members.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu, Honorable Chairperson of the House. My greetings to honorable members of the House and our guests. But before ngikhulume, ngiyavelana kakhulu no honorable member uBalindlela, who is aspiring to be a speaker of the future. Engathi ugibele ibus wrong. Le bus oyigibelile ingeke ikufikise la ufuna kuya khona. To the honorable member from the EFF, my belief is that you lead by example. You walk the talk. When you talk about European and Western culture, I was looking at you with interest. Kusukela enyaweni, uyofika etulu kule overall oyigqokile is Western culture. What do we learn from you? Honorable Chairperson,
Order, members, order.
Honorable Chairperson and the House, it takes a
Point
visionary
of order.
Honorable
organization.
Steenhuisen.
Madam Chairperson, we had a ruling in the House yesterday that, in the National Assembly, that members may not address other members directly in the House and that they must address him through yourself, Madam Chair. And I would like you to give us an indication today whether that rule is going to apply in this joint sitting as well.
I apologize. I apologize.
Honorable member, please desist.
I apologize.
Continue, please.
Honorable Chairperson and the House, it takes a visionary organization with interest of people at heart to aspire for a united nation. in
Members,
diversity.
order. The
No
speaker is
matter-
not audible on the podium.
I was saying it takes a visionary organization with interest of people at heart to aspire for a united nation in diversity, no matter what circumstances it finds itself. At its founding conference in 1912, the ANC issued a clarion call for African unity under the slogan, "We are one people," as the creation of one South Africa, which in the words of the Freedom Charter, South Africa belongs to all its inhabitants, black and white. Simple put, South African united in diversity, sharing one unique culture, a culture that is a weapon in our national democratic revolution. That is why, Honorable Chairperson, Tina, sibeketelela naloku lekungafanelanga sikubeketelele. Lokwentiwa ngilamanye amalunga alendlu le. Because we've got a responsibility of building a united nation. Some of the things that they are doing are not tolerable, but because we've got a responsibility which we committed ourselves 102 years ago, we started with an end in mind. So each and every step we take is towards achieving the ideal united nation in diversity. That is what we aspire. This finds expression in our policy orientation, the Women's Charter, the Freedom Charter, Ready to Govern, and the NDP. Borrowing from the words of the late former President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Nelson Mandela, on the occasion of the opening of the Cultural Development Congress at the Civic Theatre in Johannesburg, I quote, "Through this destructive and violent legacy of apartheid, where sacredness of life has no meaning, we inherited the culture of death." That is what we inherited from the apartheid government. As destruction to white minority regime, torture, detention, massacre were the principal weapon used by the then government to keep itself in power. During the worst years of oppression, when all avenues of legitimate protest were closed by the apartheid legislation, it was the art and culture that articulated the plight and democratic aspiration of our people. It was demonstrated through drama, dance, literature, songs, film, sculpture, and paintings that defines the silence that apartheid sought to impose. Inspired by the rich, diverse, and proud heritage since 1994, there have been strides made in building a truly united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. The richness, the heritage is also reflected in the diversity of our languages, including the languages of the Khoi, the San, and the Bushmen, and Griqua communities. The richness of our heritage has also found expression in the diversity of the religious belief, all of which define.
Speaker, can I speak or can I stand on a point of order?
If it is a point of order, please proceed.
Indeed, the Khoi and the San are not Bushmen. Shall she withdraw that statement?
Honorable member, the lingo is Khoi,
I withdraw.
Kwe, San.
I
You withdraw.
I withdraw.
It is withdrawn, please proceed.
I withdraw. The richness of our heritage has also found expression in the diversity. Okay. It is this collective heritage that must also be at the center of ongoing efforts to promote social cohesion, nation building, and reconciliation. This heritage must bind South Africans together towards a common national identity and a common South African consciousness. Honorable Chairperson, this debate takes place when women of this country celebrate 60 years of Women's Charter. The Women's Charter was adopted on the 17th of April, 1954, setting out the philosophy and vision of the newly formed federation. For the time, its tone was defiantly feminist. Its preamble read as follows, open quote, "We, the women of South Africa, wives and mothers, working with women and housewife, African, Indian, European, and colored, hereby declare our aim of striving for the removal of all laws, regulations, conventions, and customs that discriminate against us as women and that deprive us in any way of our inheritance right to the advantages, responsibilities, and opportunities that society offers to any one section of the population," close quote. The Women's Charter was a groundbreaking document. We always think that the first charter was the Freedom Charter. The Women's Charter was done before the Freedom Charter. The Women's Charter was a groundbreaking document bringing women's rights into the broader human rights demanded by the liberation movement. Its stipulations were eventually incorporated into the Freedom Charter, the blueprint of the anti-apartheid struggle adopted at Kliptown in June the following year. The aim of the Women's Charter was to declare that the organization be formed for the purpose of uniting women in common action. That is what we mean when we say united in diversity. The right to vote and to be elected to all state bodies without restriction of discrimination. That is why today as women, we are enjoying to participate equally with our men in this house. It's because of that action. The right to full opportunities for employment with equal pay and possibilities of promotion in all spheres of work. Equal rights with men in relation to property, marriage, and children, and for the removal of all laws and customs that deny women such equal rights. For the development of every child through the free compulsory education for all. This was said by the women in 1954. Bakhona ke laba manje, labenta ngathi ngibo laba baqhamuka ne-free education. Women of 1954 were calling for a free education. For the removal of all laws that restrict free movement, that prevent or hinder the right of free association and activity in democratic organization, and the right to participate in the work of these organizations, to build and strengthen women's section in the national liberatory movements, the Organization of Women in the Trade Union, and through the People Varied Organization, to cooperate with all other organizations which have similar aim in South Africa as well as throughout the world. Honorable Chairperson, I must say that if you look at all these demands that were raised by women in 1954, we are here today to congratulate the women of South Africa for the achievements they have made so far, and also congratulate the government
Honorable
that
Member,
has been...
your time has expired. The Honorable Member Msimang.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The IFP is not looking forward to commemorating Heritage Day. As a country, we have not handled social cohesion in a satisfactory manner. We are now even more divided than in the 2010 World Cup. Even in this House, racial slurs are common and do not reflect any measure of cohesion or nation building. One of the greatest ways in which we can respect our past is by bettering our future. In many ways, this has been achieved, but in far more ways, it has not. A great deal of work must still be done. In the realm of HIV and AIDS, its recognition and treatment, we have seen this government evolve from the position of total denialism to one in which HIV and AIDS, its prevention and cure, is now first and foremost on our health agendas. The IFP has always championed the fight against this scourge, even when it was widely unpopular to do so. We supported the Treatment Action Campaign in their legal battle to have nevirapine given freely to HIV-positive women who were pregnant so as to prevent the transmission of this dread disease from mother to child. The last 20 years have accorded us a heritage of transition from the old apartheid style of governance to the new democratic dispensation. We still face many challenges. Our municipal services are in a state of disintegration that beggars belief. Year after year, we see service delivery protests over basic services such as water, housing, and electricity. Our municipal system is on the verge of collapse. We speak proudly of how far the country has come from the days of apartheid, yet shades of what that government did to our people are evident in our current government. I cite here the recent horrors of Marikana and Vicksburg as examples. Future generations will have nothing of substance to celebrate if all they receive from us is a political, social, and cultural heritage that completely divides us. In fact, it is high time that this government draws a line in the sand, stating this far and no further on public services mismanagement, corruption, fraud, and incompetence. This is not the heritage we want to leave to our children. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Mwabe.
Madam Speaker, honorable members of this House, the preamble of our Constitution captures vividly the nature of our national heritage, and I quote, "We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity," unquote. The NFP wishes to applaud the people of South Africa for successfully celebrating our diverse heritage in 20 years of our democracy. We are reminded in the preamble of our Constitution that we as South Africans are commanded to remain united in whatever we do. And we are also reminded that our rich diversity is the fountain from which our unity originates. Madam Speaker, our heritage has many facets. It can be social, natural, political, or cultural. As a National Freedom Party, we wish to reflect on the story of our traditional leaders and recognize their contribution in advancing our heritage in the 20 years of our democracy. We commend our traditional leaders for their efforts to preserve our cultural practices that seeks to promote moral regeneration and healthy living of our people. In particular, we refer to practices such as circumcision custom in the Eastern Cape and other provinces, as well as the annual reed dance and virginity testing in KwaZulu-Natal. We urge our government to continue supporting these practices and support the traditional leaders by bringing the medical experts in where necessary. This is crucial, Madam Speaker, because soon it will be impossible or difficult to advance the interest of our people if we have citizens who are sick and paralyzed by moral decay. Inasmuch as we celebrate the above, Madam Speaker, let us be mindful that there are many poor, unemployed, and marginalized people in our country who have a very little to celebrate. Honorable Madam Speaker and the honorable members, we would be lacking if we did not pay tribute to our performing artists who have established themselves internationally. In particular, the NFP wishes to make mention of the achievement of Ubaba, Joseph Shabalala, and the Lady Smith Black Mambazo, who have won for our country several Grammy Awards. Their music, as we all know, has fused elements of our culture with that of the West. This fusion has resulted in a style of music that is unique, drawn from diverse influences, and offered to the world a uniquely South African. Siyabonga kakhulu kuMshengu Shabalala neMambazo. Nezwe lonke salibongela ngokuba nama-artist afana nalawa. Ngiyabonga somlomo.
Ngiyabonga baba. The Honorable Foss.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, honorable members, and the public in the gallery. Shortly before he died, French President François Mitterrand was asked how he thought history would judge him. It all depends on who is writing it, he replied. Now, as we celebrate our South African heritage and acknowledge the past, let us reflect on Mitterrand's wise observation and ensure that our history as a people is written in the name of all South Africans. And that our past, however terrible and traumatic, humane or heroic, is an inclusive account of our story as a nation and as our place in the world. Agbare Speaker, daar is een nalatenskap wat ons as Suid-Afrikaners almal as 'n nasie deel. Dit is die erfenis van ons grondwetlike demokrasie. Ons demokratiese betekenis gee vir mense voorsorg vir alles wat ons erf. En hiermee saam verskaf die instellings van ons land, soos onderskryf in die grondwet, wettige en teenwigte wat ons kan gebruik om die mag van misbruik hok te slaan. Ons moet alles doen om ons demokrasie te bewaar en te beskerm. Want sonder demokrasie is ons nie vry om ons pragtige land te geniet wat ons geërf het nie. En sonder demokrasie is ons ook nie vry om ons kulturele diversiteit te vier nie. En agbare voorsitter, ons moet nooit vergeet dat ons kinders en hulle kinders nie kan kies watter soort nasie hulle sal erf nie. Now, Madam Chair, in order to really understand the true sense of this important day on our calendar, we must ask ourselves the following questions and contemplate. What are we celebrating on Heritage Day? And what does Heritage Day mean, and what does it mean to all of us as South Africans? Heritage means tradition, birthright, or legacy. And on the face of it, does that represent unity, or does it represent disparity or separation? As South Africans, should we be focusing on our history, or should we be looking forward towards the future? Now, Madam Chair, I believe that today, here in South Africa, we are building a new heritage. It is a history that our children can look back on and celebrate. And Madam Speaker, I believe that Heritage Day should also be a day of reconciliation, celebrating the huge steps that we have made as a nation, following the example of Nelson Mandela. This, of course, raises the question, what do we all have in common that we can celebrate? Equality is something that we can all aspire to, whatever our background or culture may be. Now, the desire for equality, strange as it may seem, could in fact be a unifying factor. And the South African Constitution, praised all over the world, was built on the premise of equality and freedom for all. Now, of course, it is all well and good criticizing a particular policy, but the key is finding a viable and workable alternative. Now, Madam Chair, what is needed is training for young people and at the same time providing older people with new skills, regardless of race, creed, gender, or sexual orientation. And the Constitution of our nation is there to abide by and not to pick and choose from. So, mevrou die Speaker, nie baie mense verstaan die ware betekenis van Erfenisdag nie. Vir sommige is dit 'n geleentheid om by mekaar te kom saam met familie en vriende vir 'n braai. Maar neem dit in ag die menigte van kulture wat van ons die reënboognasie maak. Ons erfenis is baie uniek en kosbaar, want dit help ons om ons kulturele identiteit te definieer en dit lê dus in die hart van ons geestelike welsyn en dit het die mag om ons nasie te bou. En daarom glo die DA dat Erfenisdag 'n groot herinnering is van wat ons inherent maak, van die vele kulture en tradisies wat uiteindelik by mekaar gekom het en beïnvloed wat ons almal vandag is. Dit is 'n dag wat ons moet herinner om nie net mekaar se verskille te omhels nie, maar om met mekaar se kulture en tradisies te verken en te ervaar wat anders is as wat ons ken. So, Madam Speaker, this will become our heritage, something to really celebrate, a gift that we can pass on to our children and their grandchildren. And one such project that should preserve and advance our heritage is the Robben Island Museum. And I'm sure that we would all agree that this is the one single place in our history that represents South Africa and the world's memory of Madiba. Now, the reality is, Robben Island Museum is mismanaged, and this is an insult to Madiba's memory. It is important that all heritage sites be properly managed, and Robben Island Museum has been a problem for many years, and this can no longer be tolerated, from the management through to the operations. Now, according to the Robben Island annual report, revenue from tour sales have decreased with 1.4 million rand in the 2012-2013 financial year. Furthermore, visitors to Robben Island has declined by 5% in December 2013 compared to December 2012. Now, Madam Speaker, Madiba, South Africa, and the world deserves better. So, in closing, our heritage celebrates our achievements and it contributes to redressing past inequalities. It educates and it also deepens our understanding of what society, while at the same time it also encourages us to empathize with the experiences of others. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Lilunga lehloniphekile, Makentuli.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable members of the August House, it's an honor to me to partake in this debate on behalf of KwaZulu-Natal on heritage. Indeed, it's a core of our lives, and it will always remain important. South Africa is on top of preserving languages, and thus I will also express myself in mother tongue. Sihlalo ohloniphekile, ngivumele ukuthi ngithi ukuhlehla kancane ngokucaphuna umlando weNingizimu Afrika. Kuyiqiniso elingeke laphikiswa ukuthi the current democratic South Africa is a product of many years of colonialism of a special type where both the oppressed and the oppressor occupied the very same space. Beyond this historical fact, Honorable Chair, I agree with the late Steve Biko, who was brutally killed by Amavaga, that I quote, "Mind of the oppressed is the potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor," close quote. Honorable Chair, I will, however, add that the distortion and the undermining African heritage and issues of identity were also important weapons used by the oppressor with an intention of eroding African pride, heritage, and identity, which are key foundations upon which self-determination and realization can be found. Ngamafushane isizwe esingazi imuva laso asingeke sazi nalapho siyakhona. ISouth Africa ine-history ecebile kanjalo neKwaZulu Natal njengengxenye yayo injalo. Siyaziqhenya ngobuthina nemvelaphi yethu. Umlando wethu ukubeka kucace ukuthi amakhosi oswela kanye namanye amaqhawe awavumanga ukufunzwa abezizwe nje athule. Alwa. Uma siphuma kwelikaMthaniya lapho ilembe eleqa amanye amalembe ngokhalipha labona kusemqoka ukwakha isizwe esiqinile nesihloniphekile. Singelibaleke ukubonga kuhulumeni kaKhongolose ngokulokhu ekhombisile njalo ukubaluleka kwamaqhawe ethu alwele leli lizwe ngokulokhu ebuyisa amathambo awo ekhaya ngoba alwe ngezindlela ezinhlobonhlobo. Ake ngibalule nje ukuthi lapha KwaZulu Natal bekubekwa amathambo kaNet Nakasa owayeyiqhawe lombhali owahamba waliflathela leli ngoba ebenyama nambana kuhulumeni wobandlululo. Emva-ke kweminyaka emingaka kodwa aseze abuya amathambo akhe. Ngiyafisa ukusho ukuthi la uma sibheka emuva sibuyela emlandweni wakithi kwakufundiswa abantu besebancane indlela yokuziphatha kubona bonke ubulili. Kube nemigidi enhlobonhlobo yenjabulo nayo okwakuhaywa kuyo amaculo aphinde abe nemiyalezo eyakhayo. Kwakuthi nje noma kusuka insizwa igiya kube nezibongo ezimuyalezo futhi ngokunjalo. Kwakunenhlonipho ke nangokubuka izikhathi zonyaka. Kwakunendlela okwakuhlonishwa ngazo. Kuthiwa lokhu akwenziwa ehlobo noma ebusika. Kuhlonishwe lezo zinto zingenziwa. Kunezimo zomlando wokunikela okuvikela isizwe. Ngingabala nje impi yaseSandlwane, impi yaseNcome nokunye okwakuvikela isizwe kanye namagugu aso. Namhlanje ke isilo samabandla kunemikhosi edumile nehlonishwayo esaqhutshwa ukubuyisa isithunzi sethu. Ngabala umkhosi wokweshwama, umkhosi welembe, umkhosi wemhlanga neminye. Ekanti nemindeni isalokhu iqhubekile izenza ezinye izinto ezikhombisa imuva lethu ezisiza kakhulu ekufundiseni ngokuziphatha nokwakha isizwe. Kukhona umhlonyana, kukhona umgonqo, kukhona umemulo nokunye. Zonke lezi azizi nje mahala, zinokufundisa phakathi, zinokwakha phakathi. Nabafana abancane ubethu mayisengena ebudodeni aphume izintatha aphikelele ehlathini kukhishwe izinkomo nezisengwayo zingabuyi zize zilandwe izintombi ngempi. Uyoyalwa ke indlela yokuziphatha adle namakhubalo okumqinisa. Namhlanje sibhekene nama-social ills okuyinto entsha okukhombisa ukuthi kukhona okulahlekile. Kumele siqinise ku-heritage yakithi. I-KZN inamagugu ayo ewabambe okwezikhali zamantungwa kwazise phela namanye ama-World Heritage Site akuyo le ndawo. Ngabala Isimangaliso, iDrakensberg namanye. Sihlalo ohloniphekile. Mhlambe nje uma ngayibeka kafushane, to put it simple, that the exclusively minority not being satisfied with accumulating wealth through disposing the native people of their wealth also ensured that they busted asunder their cultural life, heritage, and identity. What was done by the settlers to us reminds me of the biblical verse, Psalm 137 from the Holy Bible. Honorable Chair, leli verse elisencwadini engcwele likhuluma ngabantu, where former president of South Africa once said, were the forcible Madiba, were the forcible transported from their uniform, ancestral and spiritual home,
Order, honorable members.
Jerusalem and Zion dumped in hostile Babylon and required to repudiate their identity. The former president correctly continued to say that, I quote, the response of the captives who refused to carry out the commands of their captors conveys to us the important message that memory, heritage, and identity assume their real meaning when they belong to the collective, as a unique features of community, signifying a social memory, a social heritage, and a social identity which even a captive people must fight to defend and sustain, close quote. Chairperson, from where I'm standing, I would argue that people of South Africa have the practical meaning above response by the captive when in 1955 they declared in the Freedom Charter that, I quote, culture shall be open and that the government shall discover, develop and encourage national talent for the enhancement of our cultural life. All the cultural treasures of mankind shall be open to all by free exchange of books, ideas, and contacts with other lands, close quote. African National Congress has devised a number of different campaigns and inventions, including legislation that seeks to ensure that just like captives referred to in the above paragraphs, memory, heritage, and identity assume their real meaning. This is important at this second phase of our transition as we navigate towards addressing social ills and forging social cohesion, which are integral parts of our struggle to address the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Again, forging common sense of identity remains one of the important steps towards realizing a non-racial society, united, democratic, amongst other things, as part of the strategic goals of the National Democratic Revolution as the maximum program of the African National Congress. On this note, Honorable Chair,
Honorable Chairperson, whilst I understand that the last member who spoke was soft-spoken, it becomes increasingly difficult to hear what they are saying when members in this House are conversing aloud. And that's not allowed in terms of Rule 46. And particularly when members of the NCOP are trying to converse across the floor to members on this side of the House. If they want to sit in the NA benches, then they are welcome to do so. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Honorable Member Singh is correct. May I ask all of us to converse, if we have to, softly, so that we do not drown the speaker on the podium, particularly those of us who may be meeting friends we haven't seen for some few days. The temptation to want to speak, I know, is there. but you are allowed to maybe just take a step, go out, and do whatever little thing you want to talk about. For now, can we allow Utatu Filtane to take his place? Thank you.
Honorable Speaker and honorable members, this 2014 Heritage Month coincides with the beginning of the second centenary of disposition of the indigenous people of South Africa of their heritage, the land. South Africa still suffers the effects of the 1913 Land Act, even as we celebrate our heritage. It is this statute that was used to dispose black people of their land, livestock, seeds, wagons, and all forms of production, robbing them of their livelihoods, trampling on their dignity, and violating their human rights and indeed their heritage. High levels of poverty, underdevelopment, inequality, unemployment have their origin from, amongst others, the legacy of land disposition. If we are to tell a story of heritage that takes South Africa forward, surely it cannot be business as usual. We can't claim to be celebrating our culture, traditions, and beliefs and hoping to build a cohesive society when part of our heritage, the land, is not part of us. We cannot claim a living heritage in the land not of our own. We can't remember and heal the wounds of the past and celebrate our history with land ownership patterns still remaining the same or with minimum shift. This Heritage Month and the 20th one since the advent of democracy must recommit and unite us to do everything possible to address the land ownership in order to be able to celebrate future heritage together in our land. It is when we have aggressively tilted land ownership patterns in favor of indigenous citizens that indeed we can tell the story that moves South Africa forward. Land ownership continues to play a significant role in social cohesion and a central role in the racially divisive politics of the past. Equally, land ownership plays a central role in celebrating a heritage and as a nation united in diversity. The current slow delivery of land caused by ineffective governance and maladministration must be attended to with immediate effect. The failure to move with necessary speed in addressing this complex matter does not only rob South Africans of their heritage, but also deprives them of their economic and emotional opportunities to become active citizens of the country. Land creates wealth, and equal land ownership by South Africans is vital for the success of planned sustainable development. Thus, government has to double up the speed with which it tackles this problem. In closing, rapid land reform targeting urban and semi-urban communities must be urgently implemented. Government must speedily move. I thank you.
Enkosi Tatu Filtane. Honorable Michael Akes, I'm not sure that I pronounced your name correctly. If I have, thank you. You're welcome on the podium.
Honorable Chairperson, the Greeks have a word, much like our own Ubuntu, that cannot be translated. It represents a set of values and is considered one of the highest virtues. This word, this value, is called philotimo. Philosopher Thales explained, philotimo to the Greek is like breathing. A Greek is not a Greek without it. This feeling that many of us know without ever having heard the word before literally means love of honor. In its simplest form, it means doing good, doing what is right, putting your country, your people, and your fellow beings before yourself.
Order, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Dlozi.
Is it parliamentary to be told of Greek when we're celebrating South Africa?
Honorable Dlozi.
We're debating heritage
Honorable
of South Africa.
Dlozi. Honorable Dlozi, take your seat. I think we need to be tolerant. Honorable Telezi.
A point of order. The word demos is a Greek word. It means the people.
Honorable members, Thank you very much. I think we are learning, we are being taught something new, and as such, I'm sure Babu Dlozi, you can learn more from Honorable Buthelezi. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, it is an appreciation, Philotimo is appreciation and admiration for heritage and the ancestors. It is honor and pride. It's a sense of duty towards your people, often through generosity and sacrifice, and ultimately it's your legacy, that which you leave behind to make the world a better place. Thales could just as well have said, Philotimo to the human race is like breathing. An individual is not a person without it. Honorable Chairperson, on 24 September, we as a nation celebrate National Heritage Day. We become even more united in our diversity as we recommit to the values that have built this nation over the past 20 years. Heritage is a constantly changing concept. We are shaped by it, and each generation in turn does its part to shape the heritage of those who come after them. We therefore are, to some extent, our heritage, as individuals and as a nation. We as a young united nation are still finding our feet and building a heritage we can all be proud of together. This is done through individual actions, respect, and a love of who we are as a collective and what we stand for. Slowly but surely it gives form to a rich and joint heritage, where a statue of a Boer general can stand in the shadow of our democratic flag, a radical group protesting at his feet, where hardcore rugby fans flock to the Soweto Stadium with their vuvuzelas, and Chisanyama becomes just as colloquial a term as braai, where it is not uncommon to hear Saki Saki and Brenda Fassie at the same event, or 1,000 heartbeats in rhythm with the Kaapse Klopse. To some, this juxtaposition of these apparently conflicting cultures may seem peculiar, but to me, it is in this diversity that I find what it means to be a South African. The magic of our heritage, unlike nations that have enjoyed peace and unity for centuries before us, lies not in what has already been built by those who came before us. The magic lies within ourselves and the moments we create. That is our heritage. It is enshrined in the overwhelming sense of pride when we read that Cape Town is the most beautiful city in the world, or that Gauteng alone has a larger economy than almost all other African countries. It is in the knowledge that we were the inventors of the CAT scan, thin solar cells, the cyber tracker, the oil can guitar, the first to introduce streetlights, the first to turn coal into oil, the first heart transplant, the world's first digital laser, and the second oldest air force in the world, to name a few. Our heritage is also the strong sense of love one feels for our fauna and flora, our coastline and mountains. The love that drives us to fight for the rhino and to vote for Table Mountain. The love that so quickly becomes a longing when we are abroad, and the knowledge that wherever we are, whatever we are all South Africans. Similarly, our heritage is to be found in the actions of strong leaders. Their legacy became our heritage. I think of King Moshoeshoe from the region where I come from, who chose peace above revenge and personal interest. I think of Mahatma Gandhi. These men had Philotimo. All people like Helen Suzman and President Mandela, who in their different ways, along with thousands within the borders of our country and without, fought for the very principles we base our nationhood on today, out of a certain Philotimo. They displayed these virtues without ever having heard the Greek word before. They left us a heritage as a young and vibrant nation of unity in diversity, a respect for the rule of law, a love for democracy and democratic values, a sense of duty and pride. Of course, there are those few who do not share in the dreams of this legacy, but it's their heritage too. Often, we concentrate so much on giving our children what we did not have, whilst we should perhaps concentrate a bit more on giving them what we were fortunate enough to indeed have. Unfortunately, Chairperson, we currently run the risk of leaving them nothing but a culture of corruption and a legacy of unemployment, where those who care for no one but themselves and nothing other than to dodge their day in court become the unfortunate stuff heroes are made of, with Nkandla as a monument to corruption, one monument the Honourable Minister conveniently failed to mention earlier. The legacy of those who came before us is our heritage. What then, honourable friends and members, will our legacy be? What will the heritage that we leave our children upon which to build their hopes and aspirations be? Whatever we as a nation leave behind through our actions, may it always display some measure of philotimo. May we bring such a legacy, or rather build such a legacy, that will ultimately be a heritage of which those who will come after us can be proud. Only then can we say, without blatantly lying, that this generation has a good story to tell. I thank you.
Ilunga elihloniphekile umama uTom.
Sihlalo obekekileyo. Lenyanga sikuyo. Inyanga yamafa namagugu ethu. Ilifa ke yinto oyifumana ungakhange uyisebenzele. Isetyenzelwa ngomnye umuntu wena uxhamle. KwaXhosa kukho intetho ethi uqweqwedisa ilifa ngathi ngumgqakhwe. Xa usenza into ongayikhathalelanga, uthatha into esetyenzelweyo ngomnye umuntu uyenza unobenani. Siyawubona ke lo mkhwa unetyeneba nomdintsi. Somlomo namalungu abekekileyo sihlalo. Igugu yinto oneqhayiya ngayo. Yinto ozidlayo ngayo. Yinto oyixabisileyo. Yinto onebhongo ngayo. Yiyo lonto igugu lakho uxolele ukulikhusela nangobomi bakho. Namhlanje sifanele ukhe sithi nqumama singamalungu alendlu yowiso-mthetho. Ewe yinyaniso into yokuba sifuna ukwakha thina amagugu namafa
Order, Honorable Member.
abantwana bethu.
Honorable Tom, can you take your seat? Honorable members from the NCOP in front, can you please take a seat, sir? Thank you. You can proceed, Honorable Member.
Amagugu namafa esifuna ukuwashiya siwashiyele izizukulwana ngezizukulwana ezizayo emva kwethu, kodwa asikwazi kulibala apho sisuka khona, kuba ingxaki yinto yoba sifuna ulibala apho sisuka khona sileqe phambili. Kanti ikhona intetho ethi indlela enqumlayo eyirhangi ngehle ufike ingaphumeli kweliya cala. Bayawuyazi abantu baseBhayi uba zikhona iirhangi ezingaphumeliyo. Siyakhumbula ngalomhla apho sisuka khona kurhulumente wobandlululo owawucinezela ubulala abantu ngobuninzi. Asinakuyilibala indlela ababethetha ngayo besenyelisa umbutho kaKhongolose abebesithi ngelo xesha ngabagrogrisi. Indlela ababethetha ngayo icaciswa kakuhle kwincwadi kaDivet Potgieter ethi Total Onslaught. Ndimcaphule. A propaganda war based on actual lies and disinformation in order to win the favor of the black population and subtly turn them against the African National Congress in South Africa and the Southwest and the SWAPO in the Southwest Africa. This costing taxpayers billions of rands. The communication operations that were aimed at attacking the enemy psychologically by broadcasting disinformation and falsehoods all over the world in order to confuse and spread panic in their ranks, in many instances, certain damning information about the enemy was withheld until it was strategically advantageous to release it and thus achieve maximum success against the enemy. Ndivale ucaphulo. Siyazibona ezi zinto zisenzeka namhlanje sihlalo obekekileyo. Lendo libali lethu kulapho sivela khona ayisincedi into yokuba siyibaleke inyaniso emsulwa engenakuphikiswa ngubani. Amagugu ethu namafa ethu asekelezelwe ekubeni singobani na, senza ntoni na ngoku, siyaphi na ngaphambili. Honorable members, we should really look at the issue, at those things that unite us. We know that we are from this horrific history, the history of horror stories. But we, as the African National Congress, have put this framework for reconciliation. Siyacela ke into yokuba abantu beze ngaphambili sisebenzisane. We can never forget the day that we all voted for the first time. This is one of the days in South Africa where we all know that people were proud of. And yinto leyo ekufuneka isoloko ikhona kuthi isikhuthaza into yokuba into nganye esiyenzayo masiyenzele ukusiunita. Besi-divided for ixesha elide, asinawe afforda loo nto ngoku. Honorable Chairperson, the Freedom Charter, a backbone of our democratic principles, states that all cultural treasures of mankind shall be open to all. The African National Congress, driven by its strategic perspective, believes that culture is an integral component of the process of development, in that it contributes to such processes. Culture also seeks to inform and contribute to nation-building efforts. These two processes have been the highest priority in our culture and in our country, and culture has a central role to play in the successful unfolding of this. Honorable Chair, for any country to become prosperous, it has to gear its citizens towards a shared vision, towards a shared culture, and towards a shared identity. This drive towards oneness is crucial as it chisels citizens to work in partnership rather than against each other. It is indeed when we understand and accept each other's differences that we can build a thriving nation. To achieve this, we must use the experience that we have acquired. And honorable members, it's a pity that you cannot buy experience over the counter. You have to go through a process for you to get experience. You can never be mature without going through a process. Maturity cannot be bought over the counter. Amava awathengwa. Ukuvuthwa nokuchubeka akuthengwa. Kufuneka uhambe endaweni uyihambele endlela inde uyokufikelela ekuvuthweni nekubeni namava. Honorable Chair, when developing a shared identity framework, The ANC is mindful of not suppressing the alternative culture or other identities. The ANC is a movement of the people, and it derives its mandate from the electoral majority. As a government of the people, the ANC cannot be seen to distort culture and memory. Funeka inyaniso ithethwe ngobunjalo bawo. While the ANC strongly believes in the shared identity principle, it also recognizes that the diversity is what makes us as South Africans unique. Within that context, the ANC strives for the protection and promotion of all cultures, languages, traditions, and histories. Honorable Chair, the ANC has made a pledge to build a non-racial, non-sexist, and a democratic South Africa. Over the past 20 years, the ANC has built foundations for a socially cohesive society which recognizes each other's differences. Various studies have been made, and they have indicated that the national pride of South Africans has improved. But, honorable members, we are not yet there. There is a lot that still needs to be done for us to reach unity. Ifuneke lonto into bathina malungu alendlu yowisomthetho siqale kuthi. It begins with an individual. Uqala ngawe njengesiqu. Ingqondo yakho uyilungiselele lento intsha kuba kaloku undalashe uyathanda ukuhlala ekhondoza. Akululanga ukuphuma kwinto yakudala. Isiqhelo siyayoyisa ingqondo. Utsho umXhosa. I have a story to tell, and the story is a good one. Honorable members, as I was one day, there is a lady that came to me to say that my brother was lost and he was killed. He was skipping the country and he was killed. We don't know where he is, and I actually dream about him. And he is asking us why we are not fetching him. And we thought that, where should we get this person? This is Vuyani Goniwe, an MK member who was killed by the forces of apartheid. And there were 4 of them. He was found in a shallow grave with 2 other comrades. And the NPA, through DNA, identified Vuyani Goniwe. And his remains were taken to the province. And when the remains were given over to the family was so relieved. They were so excited because it is our culture to bury our own indignity. And the story is that he came back, his remains came back, he was buried in Alice. He was buried in dignity. And this is what this government is doing, to bring back the remains of the people who were killed by another system, because the ANC did not kill Vuyani Goniwe. Vuyani Goniwe was killed by the apartheid system, but it brought the remains back for the family to be at peace and to move, so that this family can be in a position to move forward. And when a family moves forward, the community moves forward, and the society moves forward, and South Africa moves forward. Thank you.
Enkosi Mamutom, Honorable Katia.
Thank you, Chairperson. The preamble to our Constitution reads, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. It's worth recalling how 24 September became a Heritage Day indeed. Traditionally, on the 24th of September, the Zulu nation would gather at King Shaka's grave in Kwadokuza to honor King Shaka. The public holiday
Order,
bill
Honorable Member, can we
presented-
please converse a bit lower so that we can hear the speaker on the podium?
The Public Holidays Bill presented to Parliament at the time did not have the 24th of September included on the list of proposed public holidays. As a result of this exclusion, the Inkatha Freedom Party at the time objected to the bill, and a compromise was reached, giving life to a public holiday known as Heritage Day. How Heritage Day evolved is a lesson on how we as South Africans can use Heritage Day and our various heritages not to divide, but to unite. COPE believes that over the past 20 years, our full range of diverse traditions and culture have been subjected to contemporary political realities, sporting activities, contested meanings, and new behavior that were never part of our previous experiences. Heritage is both tangible and intangible. Songs, weddings, funerals, recipe, language, recreation, dance, our wildlife, our elephants, our rhino, and many other elements is how we identify ourselves. On the other hand, we have a very important archaeological sites that go back to the very origin of humankind. Then there are buildings with our foundations in apartheid period, but with a superstructure that reflects what we are about today. Every person has the opportunity of creating fusion. On Heritage Day, we should witness active public reflection of what we should keep, what we should acquire, and what we should invent. Heritage must be viewed as a contemporary activity with far-reaching effects. Knowing who we are, knowing who others are, each of us becomes a bigger and a better person. At the moment, we are still in no man's land, and leadership of the Mandela style is required to help us to take each other's hands, share each other's experiences, speak each other's language, so that we ourselves, in a broader light than has ever been the case, our young people will know more and understand more of one another than has ever been experienced in our country. Let's take a hand together and fuse. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. I will not have time today to talk to the story of our youth, but I would like, however, to quote one young man from the Northwest Province, Kagiso Manyadiwa, who says, National Heritage Day is a day to celebrate the contribution of all South Africans to the building of this country. What we have done well was to realize that we are all South African. The challenge now is the economic imbalance amongst us, which still divides us and must be dealt with. Instead, I will speak to the story of faith-based South Africans and Christians in particular, who would like us to relook at government's policy on religion in schools. Now, they say this with the conviction that we are tearing at the fabric of our society when we impose unrealistic guidelines that prevent learners, parents, and communities from influencing the religious ethos of their local schools. Freedom of religion is not about creating one religion for all, but allowing people the freedom to believe as they please and to share their belief respectfully and peacefully. Religion and culture are closely related and should not be stifled. Clearly, this freedom, like all others, must not negatively impact on others, but all learners and students should be able to proudly acknowledge their religious and cultural beliefs and express them in line with these in a manner that does not impose on others. Without outside interference, where the majority of learners at a school are of one faith, e.g. Christian, Muslim, Catholic, etc., it allows it follows that the ethos of that school will appear to be that of the religion of the majority. And where the community is more evenly spread across religions, the diversity will be more apparent in the ethos. There is general agreement that factual learning about religions can be useful, but many parents specifically want their children in a school that embraces and teaches their values, and I know Christians feel very strongly about this. Madiba is reported to have said in 1999 that religion was one of the motivating factors in everything he did. Without the church, he said, without religious institutions, I would never have been here today. For a significant majority of people in South Africa who believe in Jesus and have chosen a Christian way of life, it is important to obey Jesus' command of let the children come to me. And they passionately agree with the words of Ibn Leroux that as long as we deny the call of Jesus to bring the children to him, we will deny ourselves the most important platform for peace. In essence, he says, when our children grow up being taught they are their own God and are in need of no other help, they suffer from arrogance. Arrogant people are selfish. Selfish people are disruptive, and disruptive people behave like fools. Faith-based parents instill their religious values in their children from the cradle. Christians, for example, teach their children to love God, love others, forgive and care for others, and to follow the 10 Commandments, so that they may grow up with these becoming firmly held moral
Honorable
standards.
Dadl, your time has expired.
Thank you, thank you.
Ngizocela umhlonishwa uGalo athathe indawo yakhe.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. The African Independent Congress fully understands the Heritage Day, that the Heritage Day is one of the newly created South African public holidays. It is a day in which all people are encouraged to celebrate their cultural traditions in a wider context of the great diversity of cultures, beliefs, and traditions that make up the nation of South Africa. However, the AIC is of the view that as public representatives in this house, we must be honest in saying that we are not disciplined. Xa sithetha nge-tradition, uyabona ke phaya eMatatiyela koMount Fletcher, singamadoda entaba. Uyayiva le nto? Ithetha into yokubana xa uzawuba yindoda esizweni, uqala ngokweluka, ukhutshwe le ngqondo yobukhwenkwe. U-Honorable Nxesi uthi ngenye imini apha, mhlekazi, kutheni udibheyitha ngathi kusesibayeni nje? Mntaka Nxesi, ndisibona isibaya sibhetele kakhulu kunale nto enzeka apha. Isibaya singcono kakhulu kuba kaloku phaa singamadoda, siyamamelana, siyahloniphana. Esi sikhwenkwe esenzeka apha kule palamente masiphele. But at the same time, the ruling party must be honest to the people of this country in admitting the fact that it has failed in ensuring that the democracy, the very democracy that we are talking about, is benefiting the poor masses of this country. Not the leaders as it is the case right now. The ANC has failed to ensure that the government is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. Not the government of the leaders, by the leaders, for the leaders, as it is the case now.
Babu Galo, sesiphelile isikhathi.
We are the change that we seek
together we can start a new beginning for
Siphelile.
ourselves and our children.
Andiyazi ke noma bakwazile ukuyitolika ababaphezulu lento yesikhwenkwe. Mhlawumbe ke bebe mamele bavile.
On a
Babu
point of
Dlozi,
order, Chair.
ithini order Dlozi?
Chairperson, I think we must check if it is indeed parliamentary to call what is happening here isikwenkwe. No, we must, as far as I'm concerned, Chairperson, even in the language, we are being insulted. So I think we must check if it's parliamentary to say kwenzeka isikwenkwe apha. Please.
Thank you, Honorable Dlozi.
Was abantu abadala.
Honorable Dlozi, can you take your seat? I heard you. Babu Teles.
On a point of order, I would like to ask the last honorable member whether by Iskwenke was referring to my
Order, honorable members. Ngephutha babushenge usehambe wayohlala phansi ngiyathemba xa niphuma pha ngalomnyango nizawuthethathethana nobathathu kube nguye utata uGalo kube nguNdlozi kube wena sokalisa nibonisane ke noma olwimi luthethwa ngobani na. Andiqonda ubuthe umntu uthe isikhwenkwe yikho ndithi kuzawufuneka akacacise phansi kuvile tata uNdlozi sizawujonga ke apha etafuleni uba ingabe ikhona nalento olwimini apha. Enkosi, can I now allow Honorable Mkwena to take his
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Ke lebohe le batlotlehi ka kakaretso ntlong ena e hlomphehileng. I do not have a long time, so I'm going to be very short. It's important that EFF becomes the government of the day, so we have a bigger platform on these issues. I just wanted to speak on two issues on this important day. I think many other speakers have elaborated on other issues that are important to our national conscience. Two issues that are important to me. One is language, and the other is history. And I'll start with language. Now, the great Frantz Fanon says to speak a language is to take on a world, a culture. Now, we speak of equalizing the language space in South Africa. But what we have failed to do is to elevate the language space in our country to a time in which we are able to give our people the tools to emancipate themselves economically. And the best way to do that is to translate the technical subjects that we find so difficult, maths, science, history, all of those things, to translate them into the indigenous languages of this country. This is key. Because as Fanon says, when we have done that, we have then encouraged our people to take on the world of science and history and so on and so forth, and it becomes their culture. It is important that we do this so that an old man in the township or a young man in the rural areas of Ngandla, for instance, can walk into a library and be able to learn about science and history and maths and all of these things with the basic tools of reading and writing. Now, on the question of history, Ngugi wa Thiong'o says, if we want to turn Africa into a new Europe, then let us leave the destiny of our countries to Europeans. They will know how to do it better than the most gifted amongst us. Our country has some of the richest history, especially around the 1700s, the 1800s. The history of Ushaga, whom we are celebrating today, Mushweshwe, Nongawuse, Mantatisi, Soshangan, Hintsa. We need to tell their stories. And it is the duty of government to take on the responsibility of telling those stories. Because if we don't do that and we leave that in the hands of the private sector is still largely untransformed. The sector is, the means of productions are still in the hands of the minority. And if we leave the telling of our stories in those hands, we will never have justice in this country. And therefore, it is important that government takes on that responsibility of telling those stories. We need national stories, Honorable Minister of Arts and Culture. We need national stories that we can tell on Heritage Day. And one of the key ways we can do that is to have national studios. Let's have national studios, because the cost of production for people in the industry, the cost of production is the biggest in any of their projects. And so we can alleviate that problem by taking it on as
Honorable
government.
Mkwena,
I thank you, Chair. We'll
Spelling
have more
is
time when
cards.
we are government of the day to discuss these things. Thank you.
Honorable Van Damme.
Honorable Chairperson, a sense of heritage is a feeling in the soul of every human being. It's a sense of belonging with a group of people, a sense of identity, dignity, and pride. Apartheid robbed many South Africans of their heritage and created a populace that felt alienated, a populace that felt like it did not belong in the country.
Order, honorable members, can we please remember what Honorable Singh said, reminding us of the rule of behavior in the House when the speaker is on the podium? Can we please allow Honorable Van Damme to be heard?
Apartheid robbed many South Africans of their heritage and created a populace that felt alienated, a populace that felt like it did not belong in the country it lived in. I too, like many South Africans, have recently had the misfortune of being made to feel alien in the country I live in. Honorable Chairperson, ngingumtukulu wa Ethan Maisela wase Alexandra. Umtukulu wa Phumzile Khumalo wase Danauza. Umtukulu wa Visa Msomi wase Mlazi. Nemtukulu wa Ephraim Masuku wase Swatini. Through my veins courses the blood of the Swatis of Swaziland, the Zulus of KwaZulu-Natal, and the Xhosas of the Western Cape.
Order.
I am a child of this country.
Order. Honorable members, can we please allow the speaker to be heard?
Lalelani. I am a child of this country, this continent, and the international community. I owe my life to Swaziland, South Africa, and Belgium, the country my stepfather comes from. Like all human beings, no one can ever take my heritage away from me. It is ingrained in the very depths of my being. Honorable Chairperson, as a South African, an African, and a citizen of this world, I am disappointed by how our country has appeared to stand by idly while human rights abuses rage all over our continent. I would love to see our government taking more of a lead role in condemning human rights abuses in Africa, our continent. Last month, Parliament rightfully discussed the plight of the Cuban Five. But what about the unlawful arrest in Swaziland of human rights lawyer Thulani Masego and editor Bheki Makhubu? Last month, we rightfully discussed human rights abuses in the Palestinian and Israeli conflict. But what about the abuses that have happened in South Sudan, Somalia, and Niger? What is the government doing to make sure that the girls kidnapped by Boko Haram are returned to their families? We should not be afraid, honorable members, of condemning fellow African leaders if they treat their people unjustly. We owe it to the people of Swaziland and those living in other parts of Africa to stand up for their rights. After all, it was the people in African countries, like Swaziland, that allowed many apartheid activists, including those sitting in ANC benches today, to live and prosper in their countries. Why does the ANC government neglect Africa now that South Africa's freedom has been won? It is unfortunately not only those living in African countries that the ANC government has neglected. There are many living in post-apartheid South Africa today who still feel the same sense of alienation they felt during apartheid. To these people, I imagine, it is as if their heritage does not matter to the government. I am talking about people like Gogo Johanna Mokobane, who tragically lost her life after falling into a well while trying to find drinking water. Her village had been experiencing serious water shortages since before 1994. Did Gogo Mokobane feel like she belonged in South Africa, that her heritage mattered and was respected? I doubt it. I am also talking about the residents of Walmer Township in Port Elizabeth, where the use of bucket toilets has increased by a staggering 8,000. In provinces such as the Western Cape, bucket toilets have decreased, but in others such as the Eastern Cape, Northwest, and KwaZulu-Natal, bucket toilets have increased. Do the people in the provinces where no real efforts are being made to decrease bucket toilets feel like the ANC government cares about them? I doubt it. I am also speaking about young black people between the ages of 25 and 34 like myself. The quality of education provided post-1994 has been so poor that skilled employment in this category has regressed. How is this even possible? Hang your heads in shame, ANC, for failing our youth. Our young people deserve better. I am, thank you. Honorable
order.
Chairperson.
Order, Honorable Member.
Madam Chairperson, while the Honourable Van Dam was talking, and I use the word loosely, Honourable Jackson Mthembu shouted out the words, "Are you South African?"
Xenophobia.
I would say to you that it's
Honorable
offensive,
Van Dam.
and I would ask you to rule that the Honourable Mthembu, if he wants to give credence to that title, should withdraw.
Honorable members. Unfortunately, because of the high level of noise, I did not pick up what he said. No. Can we please listen to one another? The unfortunate part is that also there was an exchange. While Honorable Mthembu spoke, Honorable Van Damme responded, and both of them, I did not hear what they were saying to each other. And as you, Honorable Member, we have not finished. I was still clarifying to Honorable to the Honorable Steerhuisen what had happened. Honorable Mthembu, did you say what is alleged you have said? Honorable members, you would want to hear what Honorable Mthembu said, so can we please listen?
Honorable Chair, with due respect, she has raised all sorts of issues while she was debating. On the basis of what she was saying on Swaziland and other countries, I asked, is she South African? On the basis of what she raised.
Honorable Mthembu, I think you must just withdraw.
Well, I withdraw, Chair.
Thank you. And Honorable Van Dam, what was your response? Because you also chat back.
I clarified for him that I am South African, but...
Honorable members. Honorable members.
Okay, I withdraw. He's not
Honorable
xenophobic.
Member Van Dam, I did not hear what you said earlier, but when Honorable Van Steenhuisen spoke, you chat back and say xenophobic. Can you please withdraw that too?
I withdraw.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Chairperson, all hope is not lost. It is possible to restore our people's dignity and cultural pride. The best way to do this is to deliver services and create jobs in order to meet the imbalances created by apartheid. The ANC, granted, has done a lot to ensure this, but it can do better. According to Stats SA's recent non-financial census of municipalities, the Western Cape has the highest proportion of residents benefiting from free basic services such as water, electricity, sanitation, and solid waste management. In each of these categories, the Western Cape is far, far ahead of ANC-run provinces. The fact of the matter is, Honorable Chairperson, while the DA is not perfect, we work the hardest for vulnerable South Africans. That is why I have chosen the DA as my political home. It is a home where all are welcome regardless of race, social class, or heritage. The DA has become part of my heritage. Those who use the language of our former oppressors to call black DA voters like myself house Negroes, hired natives, puppets do not deter me. Haters will hate. The struggle against apartheid was a struggle of political choice. A struggle for all South Africans not only to vote, but to vote for the political party of choice. Like many young South Africans, I have chosen to vote for the...
Order, Honorable Member. Who is asking for a point of order?
Madam Chairperson, is it permissible in this house to use the word nigger?
Honorable Member, can you take your seat? She was making a reference on a speech that was made. So it's perfectly in order. Honorable Member, can you conclude?
Like many young South Africans, I am choosing to vote DA. I understand that ANC is scared because young black voters are leaving the ANC, and they're doing so in droves. The tide is turning. The ANC is becoming the party of the past, and the DA is becoming the party of the future.
Honorable Member, your time has expired.
I thank you.
Order, honorable members. I would now ask to the podium Honorable Balekambete, the Speaker of the National Assembly.
Honorable Chairperson, can I be recognized?
Honorable Kadi.
May I check with the Chairperson to which extent does it appear that in terms of the rules that we still form a quorum, because the benches are very empty. Maybe we can now vote on the no confidence motion.
Honorable Kadi, we are perfectly in order. You can take a seat. Thank you very much. And I would ask us not to take many point of orders that delay all of us from leaving this house earlier than we would want to. I would now, honorable members, can we allow the Speaker on the podium? Honorable Speaker.
Honorable House Chairperson, honorable leaders of opposition parties, honorable members of Parliament. We meet at this joint sitting to celebrate our rich culture and heritage, to narrate our unique story of struggle, grief, restoration, resilience, and victory. And perhaps above all, our sheer optimism for the future. The theme for this year's Heritage Day is celebrating 20 years of democracy. Tell your story that moves South Africa forward. We chose this theme because the celebration of this day is almost as old as the 20 years of our freedom. Each one of us has a story to tell about the past 20 years, and each of these stories has to help our country move forward in our collective quest for a better South Africa. Whilst reflecting about the meaning of this day, I was taken back to the address delivered by our late President Nelson Mandela on Heritage Day of 1997 on Robben Island, where he had spent years of incarceration as a prisoner. And I quote him, "In affirming a joint heritage in this place, we are reminded that our noble ideals were spurred on
even more by their long denial that today's unity is a triumph over yesterday's division and conflict. He went on in his address to say, entrench the conditions in which one can participate in building our collective democratic future. Speak one's own language. Have pride in one's culture and one's heritage. In seeking to ground our heritage in these ideals, we are striking out in a new direction, close quote. Like with the theme for this year's celebrations, therefore, on Heritage Day, we turn to the past in order to move forward into the future. On Heritage Day, we celebrate who we are, our South Africanness, our nationhood, which is, of course, still in the making. We recall our past, affirm ourselves, celebrate and recommit ourselves to remain focused on a better nation we want to become. Indeed, this day is about the past that has shaped us and brought us to where we are. The present that we create with every step we take, and the future which is in our hands. The essence of what we celebrate today is captured in the preamble of our Constitution, which declares that we, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. The same Constitution says about us who are in this house that we are elected to represent the people and to ensure government by the people under the Constitution. In a word, we are embodiment of the we the people. That is in the preamble of our Constitution. Honorable members, we say with pride and without any sense of contradiction that we are diverse people who are united in our diversity. The different colors we carry on our skins may have divided us in the past, but today we are learning to be proud of them. Our many languages no longer define us into ethnic or tribal groups that must hate each other, but are today the harmonic melodies spoken by our people. Differences in religion or faith are to us not a source of division or enmity. And I want here to share with you the pride I used to feel when we were at the Pan-African Parliament. And at every event, at the start, we would have our multi-faith prayers. And Africans would marvel at this, because in the rest of the continent, there are some places where there is no way you are going to have people in the same event representing different faiths. And I'm not one of those who believe that we've done everything and we are fine in terms of heritage, in terms of our cultural pride in what we do, but that we are far ahead of many countries because we are able to be at the same event and have those multi-faith prayers, which I believe are one of the prides of the new South Africa. All of us have opinions. All of us have strong political beliefs. In the past, this could mean a prison sentence for some of us. Today, we speak freely and associate with whoever we want.
This parliament is a true expression of all these freedoms that we enjoy today. We relish these freedoms knowing very well that we are the embodiment of the we, the people. That is in the preamble of our Constitution. The last 20 years of our freedom are a story we will keep on telling. But we should tell this story recognizing that the long walk to freedom is far from over. The 20 years that are behind us have bequeathed us a legacy that must sustain us in the long walk that is ahead of us. We, all of us, are creating a lasting legacy for those who will come after us, our children, grandchildren, and many of those beautiful ones that are yet to be born. A better South Africa must be part of a better Africa and a better world. We cannot escape our African identity, which shaped us in the struggles for decolonization here in our region and beyond. Honorable members, I am proud to remind us that this parliament was declared a Grade 1 National Heritage Site by the South African Heritage Resources Agency due to its historical, aesthetic, scientific, and social value to our country. We were honored with this highest recognition of a heritage site because, indeed, this parliament has been at the center of our politics since the 19th century, when its buildings were first erected. It was from this quarter of our city, where this parliament is located, that colonialism set out on its brutal journey of dispossession and conquest in our country. It was from here that a Union of South Africa was created in 1910 that excluded the majority of Africans, Coloureds, and Indian communities. It was in this building where apartheid triumphed. Its draconian laws passed one after another. Finally, emerging from our painful past, it was in this building that in 1994, a truly representative government was inaugurated. It was here that a constitution of a new South Africa was crafted and adopted. Honorable members, we have said that this year's celebration of Heritage Day must be about telling a story that will help our country move forward. This must be about creating a positive legacy for the future. As Tata Madiba put it in his speech that we cited above, he says, in seeking to ground our heritage, we are striking out in a new direction. I believe that there are 5 ways that the 5th Parliament can create its own positive legacy, and I wish to suggest them. First, we have to begin by defending, preserving, and consolidating the stature that earned this Parliament a Grade 1 National Heritage Site status. This means that the aesthetics of our surrounding and buildings have to be serviced and expanded. So must be our social value to the country, which all of us individually and collectively have to protect and promote. Secondly, the meaning of the we, the people, that is in the preamble of our Constitution, must be realized when our people see in all of us their true representatives throughout our term of office. It must not only be when we campaign for their votes before an election. They have to know and believe that in us, our country is in good hands. Thirdly, Parliament has a critical role to play in making our Constitution a living document, upholding and defending its ideals. Our Constitution is supreme and its supremacy must reign. Parliament is crucial to ensuring that this happens. Fourthly, as one of the three arms of our state, Parliament has to be in the front line of the second transition to our goal of building a national democratic society. In this second transition, on the one hand, we should consolidate our story of the last 20 years, and on the other, upscale the measures required for the further radical transformation of our society. And I want to here say to the Honorable Minister, I think much as we wish we could truly say we are all at the same wavelength on what we're talking about when we say we're trying to build a heritage that we all share. One of the critical points that has to be emphasized relates to not pretending that, in fact, everyone is equal. And I want to highlight the issue of black artists, Honorable Minister. And that we cannot pretend that an artist who is sitting in a rural area somewhere has equal access to the information that he would need in order for him to have equal access to what he, in fact, he does have a right to. And I say this because one has interacted with a community of artists, and one knows that black and young artists in townships, in rural areas, really need a lot more attention and help to develop the skills that they were endowed with by nature. And the past has been very unfair to our people, including artists. And I really urge that, Minister, as you settle in your portfolio, we look at these issues in finer detail so that it can be part of what we are talking about when we talk about economic
Honorable
development.
Member, the time has expired. Very difficult to say to the speaker, you can't speak, but we have to. Honorable Plowama, I hope I've pronounced your surname correctly, sir.
It's okay. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Iti needed.
Tloyamma.
Oh, thank you very much. Over
Honorable-
to you.
Honorable Minister, I want to take this opportunity to thank you.
Order, honorable members, can we please settle down?
I want to take this opportunity to thank you for the reburial of the remaining of Net Nakasa and your department. Today is the day to thank our forefathers who remained resilient against all odds when our culture and identity was under serious attack by colonial and racist forces, who their courage and generosity in spirit still inspire us today. Ke bua ka Kgoshi Sekhukhune, Chief Magado, Stephen Bantu Biko, and Francis Bart. Agam believes that there is no story that moves South Africa forward without establishing a cultural awakening where all races will forge a new identity, a national consciousness of citizenship. Our actions should reflect a multiracial society at harmony with itself, where all our heroes are celebrated without cultural and political limitations. In conclusion, Chair, in our culture, we should derive our spiritual completeness and character, our collective consciousness of who we are, our embedded values of respect and honesty, which must be the bedrock of our democratic civilization. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Ilunga elihloniphekile Babe Khawula.
Honorable Chairperson, South Africa suffered devastating cultural, spiritual, and social divisions, first at the hands of colonial rule and later at the hands of successive apartheid governments. These politically engineered divisions not only created barriers amongst and between the different peoples of our country, but they also sowed deep-rooted seeds of hatred, animosity, and selfishness. Heritage, properly handled and properly implemented, has a potential of closing these gaps among the people of South Africa. Black people in Africa and South Africa lost their cultural identities along the way. Properly utilized, heritage has the potential of bringing back our identities and the love of who we are. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I wish to express gratitude to the first cabinet of a democratic South Africa in 1994 for ensuring that 24 September is kept a heritage day for our country. I also wish to express my gratitude to the First Minister of Home Affairs of a democratic South Africa for his historic legacy of our country. Our people were made to forget themselves, their identities, and their backgrounds, but heritage celebration has the ability, capacity, and potential to reverse these to positive achievements. Africans went to as far as almost abandoning the key social maxim of umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. But through heritage, a culture renaissance program, we can rekindle the social belief. I say potential because we have not yet had a government that utilizes heritage to bring people together and close these gaps. I come from a province where the IFP government of 1994 and 1999 was able to forge ahead with a multi-party government incorporating both the ANC and IFP in order to give access to the reconciliation in that province. But at the first opportune time, hardly 2 years down the line into his premiership, the first ANC premier of 2004 destroyed this spirit and threw multi-party governance out of the window. The IFP has recently championed a debate in this House about the current practice of government to use public days and gatherings of the nation for their own political ends. This will never enable South Africa to achieve the much-needed social cohesion in our communities, and we call on the ruling parties to stop this practice. The national days of our country belong to all the people of South Africa, irrespective of political ideology and irrespective of who you are. The IFP therefore says in conclusion that in the spirit of Ubuntu, heritage is a platform that can enable the creation of a better South Africa, a proud and unified South Africa, and a South Africa with a lasting positive legacy for the future generations. I thank you.
Siyabonga lunga elihloniphekile, Honorable September.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, our visitors in the gallery, comrades and fellow South Africans, good afternoon. Molweni nonke. Chairperson, it is this collective heritage of struggle, these common yearnings which are our greatest strength as the ANC, that we have built our program of transformation on. Our program of social cohesion for our country, a program for South Africa. It must be understood why we celebrate Heritage Day. It is to ensure that we continue to build our new nation through cultural heritage. We define as South Africa our heritage of who we are, what we have, and how we do things. We chose to embrace diversity by recognizing the rich natural resources and the potential that our people have. This collaborative, innovative, peaceful approach marked the rebirth and transition from a pariah state to a growing democracy. Honorable Chair, culture, of course, which heritage forms a part of, is an essential component of human development. It provides economic growth and ownership of development processes. It is a truism that heritage, with its value for identity and as a repository of historical, cultural, and social memory, preserved through its authenticity, integrity, and a sense of place, forms a crucial aspect of the development process. The challenge of integrating heritage and ensuring that it has a role in the context of sustainable development is to demonstrate that heritage plays a part in social cohesion, well-being, creativity, and economic appeal, and indeed a factor in promoting an understanding between communities. As the ANC, our people-centered approach lends itself towards ensuring that local people, civil society, will play a role in the design and the implementation of heritage as a driver of development. Honorable members, there is evidence that environmental resources are more likely to be conserved when local residents actively participate in decision-making. One such example we as the ANC celebrate as part of our Heritage Day is our continuous recognition of creating local economic development through some of the projects that have been started, such as what has been referred to the route tourism strategies. Some of these strategies, together with the private sector initiative that we have in areas such as the Midlands Meander in KwaZulu-Natal, the Makana Heritage Route, the Palo Heritage Route, recognizing the role of a number of our local leaders and communities. Honorable Speaker, we as the ANC laud the efforts of National Heritage Council, together with the Nelson Mandela Museum and the Eastern Cape Department of Sport and Recreation and the other departments, that has done one of the aims that they have put together under the Liberation Heritage Route is to translate the wealth of heritage knowledge and resources into economic capital. Recognition of finally been given to houses of our leaders who were instrumental in the liberation struggle. Significant schools are being identified and churches, and dignity have been restored, as well as our pride and their pride. Ownership of our past, the present, and the future has been realized and are being realized. Another example of such an initiative was in the Amatole and the Chris Hani district municipalities that have joined with the Nelson Mandela Metro, which has identified, mapped, and described about 25 sites, several of very high potential development, including the Kalata House in Craddock, the Jabavu House in Middeldrift, the Puma House in Ngobo, Fort Armstrong near Belfort, the house in Kala where Batandwa Ndondo was shot, the Salam building in Port Elizabeth, and the list continues, including the Pepco 3 that were murdered. The Steve Biko Center in Johannesburg, built with a great deal of national and of course of some donor funding. By contrast, the South End Museum, also in Port Elizabeth, has managed to attract considerable support amongst the Khoisan community and is largely self-sustaining now. But besides South Africa, we too, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, between South Africa and Mali, we have also given meaning to the concept of African solidarity through the project to conserve the manuscript of the Ahmed Baba Institute, an ongoing process. And therefore, honorable members, arts and culture can and should encourage discourse and debate, broaden outlooks and horizon, and nurture understanding within the concentric rings of South Africa's communities. Honorable members, Chairperson, and Honorable Speaker, you also said we must tell the stories here today. I have such a story today where, out of their own initiative, South Africa are being moved forward. Honorable Chair, we recognize that before 1994, classical ballet was seen as the symbol of elitists. It was seen as white art. The fact that it has not only remained an integral part of our cultural fabric, but has grown over the past 20 years is a tribute to the government's policy of inclusivity. Ballet has a long history in South Africa, but the company that symbolizes post-apartheid classical ballet in South Africa, the Johannesburg Ballet, or the Joburg Ballet, under the leadership of its CEO, Dirk Badenhorst, who joined us in the gallery today, Madam Speaker, and who thank you for visiting them last week, Madam Speaker and Deputy Speaker. They traces its beginning to 2001, when 6 dancers came together and with determination and backed by a supportive board, but with no public funding, gathered the company together and began to present performances for the public, and so began their long, arduous road to becoming an active professional part of the country's cultural fabric. The 5-year ballet company, with the relationship with Cuba and the impact it has had on the development and growth of ballet in South Africa, further highlights the impact of classical ballet on South Africa and the world. It is important, honorable members, to talk about the milestone in the journey towards the establishment of the company, the creation that started off with the South African Mzansi Ballet in 2012, bringing 2 of the original 6 founders a dozen years before back together with the CEO and the artistic director of the new company. In June 2013, we must thank the city of Johannesburg that announced a generous sustainable funding grant for the company, in terms of which the name was changed to Joburg Ballet. It nurtured, and let me highlight just a few that I can mention. One such, Andile Ndlovu. He was raised in Soweto and trained in a ballet outreach program, who became a company dancer and has since pursued a distinguished career with the Washington Ballet in the United States. Then, of course, there is Kitty Petler, one of the most iconic of all South Africa's ballet dancers, who not only brings her unique talents to the glamorous professional stage, but also inspire literally thousands of young South Africans, dancing for them in dusty quadrangles and on small stoops in dozens of schools across Gauteng. We say well done to them. The ANC is proud of your innovative ways of moving South Africa forward and giving hope to the people, especially the young people in this country. Partnering with the Gauteng Department of Education is to inspire younger generations of South Africans. 2014 marked the year that the Joburg Ballet began the initiative to build and expand its already existing Joburg Ballet Development Program and Joburg Ballet Cuban School, with a project aimed at reaching 40,000 children in Gauteng. This development project drives the process of social uplifting and through the arts and education, beginning with Gauteng youth and with the aim of increasing the scale to a nationwide project. Of course, they are encouraged by Comrade Fidel Castro in collaboration with Madam Alicia Alonso. The National Ballet School of Cuba developed a unique ballet training method that is used at the Joburg Ballet Cuban School. It is particularly heartening to see the roles being played by Joburg Ballet dancers like Tabang Mabaso, a born-free South African who is not only pursuing a bargaining professional career with Joburg Ballet, but who is also giving back to the community as a teacher now and as a role model. Lerato Letlape and John Sunke are also men who have passed through their community program. I say our because I work with them quite a lot, and having now gone full circle, are teaching the children of today and at the same time achieving economic independence through the work in this field. I would like to conclude by highlighting the fact that ballet has touched the lives of hundreds of thousands of South Africans, among other events such as the opening ceremony at the Africa Cup of Nations, dancing a world first in tandem with a Boeing airliner at the Swartkops Air Show, and to millions of television viewers who have watched this event and least forget what they did even on the Goud train. The cultural landscape of South Africa is a fascinating one, a rich one, a unique, a diverse one. In the artistic and cultural aspirations of South Africans lies an infinity of possibilities waiting to be set free, ready to take wing. We have tapped some of these riches, but so much more is waiting to soar. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable September.
Can
Honorable,
I just wanted to check.
what is that?
No, I wanted to check the Honorable Togo Didiza. Are you going to be chairing from there now?
Honorable Dlozi, can you take your seat? Take your seat. Honorable Kodi.
Thank you, Chairperson, comrades and honorable members. It was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah who said that freedom must lead to the projection of the African personality. This is a recognition that white minority rule was not satisfied with political and economic domination, but consolidated it through the distortion and vilification of the history and culture of the Africans. These had the desired outcome, as Frantz Fanon said, of depersonalizing and alienating the native from himself. Thus, 20 years after the attainment of freedom, the overwhelming African majority in South Africa is a cultural minority. The stubborn demon of racism is still the proverbial elephant in the room, projected in part by the twin evils of African inferiority and white superiority complexes. The APC therefore sees this question of the projection of the African personality as a fundamental issue for a free people, because the mind of the African was the greatest battlefield during slavery through colonialism up to today. As we celebrate 20 years of freedom and September as Heritage Month, the big question is, what about the heritage of the descendants of the Khois and the Sons? These victims of cultural genocide, their language, culture, and identity consigned to the dark room by deliberate and systematic colonial aggression. What is done to restore and promote their heritage? Yes, we are reopening the land claims, but will their language be taught in schools to their kids? Will the Western Cape have a house of traditional leaders like all other provinces? What this colonial catastrophe of cultural dislocation bequeathed to the democratic state is, amongst others, unacceptable high levels of alcoholism, gangsterism, drug abuse, tuberculosis, and the embarrassment of white trusteeship in the Western Cape. Chairperson, the sad reality remains that 20 years down the line, the values and norms that inform our national life as a country remains strongly at the expense of the African majority. The African majority constitute 80% of the South African population. Surely, that must count for something. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ntingane.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Speaker, Honorable members, SALGA is honored and pleased to participate in this debate today as we celebrate 20 years of democracy and freedom and tell our local government story. Indeed, we have come a long way on our democratic journey. 1994 seems like yesterday when we dreamed of a new and brighter future. This momentous occasion presents an opportunity for us to reflect on the progress made in deepening democracy and expanding development, in particular on the role of local government in building our democratic foundations. Perhaps it is our impatience and justifiable haste to rid our people of the shackles of inequality, poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment that have caused us as South Africans to often forget the tremendous strides we have made to date and resilience shown in doing so against the odds. the local government journey. While the country is celebrating 20 years of democracy and freedom, we must bear in mind that local government is not yet 15 years old. Next year will be the milestone 15 years of democratic local government, which we look forward to reflecting on and celebrating in Parliament. We are of the persuasion that local government has come a long way since its establishment in 2000. 14 years on, and a firm foundation has been laid, which we should build on as we lead up to the 4th democratic local government elections in 2016. Let us not forget what a massive transition this was, in which we moved from a highly fragmented racial-based system of local government to an integrated democratic system with uniform all-to-all municipalities. In doing so, we consolidated local government from a racially based system of over 1,000 local authorities into 880 plus before 2000 elections, and 283 municipalities in 2000, and now 278, and in 2016, there will be 267 municipalities, and this for us is massive transformation. We established local government in areas with little or no local government previously, ensuring that every South African enjoys democratic participation. No citizen is unrepresented and is able to hold local leaders accountable. We developed a comprehensive policy and legislative framework which has been vibrant and responsive. The approach has been continuously refined. Significant progress has been made also in addressing backlogs as registered in the 2011 census results. Notably, the expansion of social infrastructure and services to poor households in the form of a basket of social services like free basic water, electricity, solid waste collection, sanitation, and sewer connectivity. These achievements often appreciated,
Try
illustrate...
to conclude, Honorable Council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable van der Walt.
Agbare voorsitter, volgende week herdenk Suid-Afrika Erfenisdag. 'n Dag waar ons moet besin oor ons erfenis. Dit wat ons as Suid-Afrikaners van geslagte voor ons geërf het en die erfenis wat ons aan ons nageslagte wil nalaat. Die titel van vandag se debat is egter misleidend en fokus nie regtig op die totale erfenis van ons land en sy mense nie, maar wel op die ANC se poging om verlore stemme by die 2014 stembusse te probeer herwin, deur voort te gaan om Suid-Afrikaners te indoktrineer met hul, en ek haal aan, goeie storie om te vertel, en ek sluit aanhaling, verkiesingsboodskap, dus op hulself gerig. It is upon us, the public representatives of the people, to ensure the heritage we leave behind is of a well-educated and skilled people who will be able to economically achieve their own dreams and be able to look after themselves and their families economically instead of being dependent on the state. Quality education is the heritage we should leave our future generations. Bantu education and the Soweto massacre of 1976 is a painful part of our heritage where people were essentially disenfranchised and had little to no opportunities. We should honor our painful past, but use the lessons we learned to fiercely fight for a future of an open opportunity society for all. More and more, we experience school boycotts as learners, teachers, and communities are dissatisfied with the ANC being unable to deliver textbooks on time, school furniture to all schools, shortage of qualified teachers, and the list goes on. The disregard for a court order to deliver school furniture by mid-June and the broken promise made by President Zuma during his SONA address on 17 June this year when he said, and I quote, Furniture will be delivered in all Eastern Cape schools by the middle of August 2014, close quote. Makes it clear the ANC has no intention to leave behind a heritage of quality education, which is clearly enshrined in our constitution. To Honourable President, we want the desk you promised the children to be delivered now. In an attempt to hide the failures of the target set for each financial year on the city school delivery program, which targeted 510 schools since its inception in 2010-11 year, only 75 were built till date. Government initiated then a school-a-week delivery program. Very good initiative, if we could deliver on it. But what are we really achieving if more and more abandoned schools with millions are found weekly across our country? On Monday, I visited Lebaka B Primary School in the Greater Letaba area, a brand new, supposed to be state-of-the-art school built with 17 million rand, but it has been empty for years. The donkeys are now roaming in the classrooms and the schoolyard. Brand new desks are gathering dust in the unused classrooms. So is all the office furniture in the admin office. Many desks and office chairs are lying outside in all weather conditions. Buildings are being stripped of their roofs and windows. Why? Why aren't our children in this school? Is this the legacy the ANC wants to leave behind? Honourable members, let me assure you, we as the DA want all South Africans to rest assured that the DA loves this country as much as you do. That's why we are here. We must all honour our past and strive together towards a better future. What we want, however, is that while young people should be given every opportunity to honour their past, they must, even more so, be provided with support to allow them to own their future. So we call on the Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Angie Motshekga, to be thoroughly transparent in her handling of the matter regarding SATU's proposal to rewrite the history syllabus and make the subject compulsory to matric. If she considers the demand to do so by engaging in extensive public and expert consultation before making any decisions. It is important to note from the outset that the DA cannot support history being compulsory through to matric. This runs counter to the principle of choice, which should be available to every child based on their skills and their aspirations. But let us ask ourselves, what heritage is it that this fifth parliament will leave behind? Will we be remembered as a parliament where hooliganism reigned? Will we be remembered as a parliament where a president refused to answer questions? Will we be remembered as a parliament where the majority party tainted the office of the speaker with a deployee? Will we be remembered as a parliament that ignored the big matters of national importance, like unemployment, corruption, service delivery, quality basic education? I am very worried, fellow honourable members, that we are walking on a path to a rotten heritage for this fifth parliament. It does not have to be this way. We can engage in robust and constructive debate on the issues that really matter to all South Africans. We can work hard, sometimes together, sometimes disagreeing with each other, towards making our country a better place. I would like to conclude my speech by appealing to all members to think about the heritage we are leaving behind in our term of parliament. Think about how we are framing the national debate and the example we are showing to our people with our debates. Let's take the time during this constituency period to think about the legacy we are leaving. I hope we can come back in the next term and work on the real issues affecting our people. Honorable Voorsitter, ek wil net graag vir die minister van Kuns en Kultuur sê, baie dankie vir die bevestiging in sy toespraak weer eens, dat hy gesê het ons tale en moedertaalonderrig is veilig. En ek wil graag vir hom sê, saam met koning Shaka se herdenking, het ons ook maandag nog 'n ikoon, geherdenk, en dit was generaal Koos Dellery, wat 200 jaar vermoor is. En dan die agbare Morapella, wat duidelik nog nooit die grondwet van hierdie land gelees het nie, and also to Honorable Ndlozi, Honorable Chair, through you, and the Honorable Gordy, in his speech now, please, I quote from the Constitution, Section 6 of the founding provisions. A pan-South African language board established by national legislation must, not may, must, promote and create conditions for the development and use of all official languages, the Khoi, Nama and San languages, to promote and ensure respect for all languages commonly used by communities in South Africa, including German, Greek, Hindu, Portuguese, Urdu, Arabic. Those are what we are doing. It's no use standing up here if you didn't read this. I thank you, Honourable Chair.
Honorable Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Service, Honorable Jeffrey.
Chairperson, honourable members, our heritage is what gives us our sense of identity and belonging. Each and every person has their own unique story to tell. It's these stories which, when woven together, tell the tale of a country which, despite its tragic history and centuries of suffering, has emerged to proudly take its place in the world. It tells the tale of groups of people who, for a very long time, viewed each other with suspicion and anger, coming together to form a nation with a unique South African identity. That is our heritage. Heritage Day is a day of celebration of different cultures and diversity of our people's traditions in the wider context of a country which belongs to all who live in it. And in this regard, it's a pity that Heritage Day in some quarters is being reduced to National Braai Day by, it is a lot more than just that element. We must learn about and respect the heritage of each and all of the peoples of South Africa. As had been mentioned by the Minister, the 24th of April is the anniversary of the assassination of King Shaka in 1828. Fred Khumalo writes, and I quote, "Shaka's Day, in honor of the man who used his spear to embroider together a diverse collection of tribes and clans into one mighty cultural quilt, had gifted us with one thing, and that you can't take away from a people, a sense of history, a sense of dignity." I will return to these issues of history and dignity shortly. It is a feature of the democratic and inclusive South Africa that the dates of our national days are set on the anniversary of a specific happening, such as the assassination of King Shaka or the massacre at Sharpeville, but are widened to include a broader theme, such as Heritage Day and Human Rights Day with regard to the two examples I have mentioned. This inclusivity must be a central part of how we celebrate our country's heritage. Perhaps the central lesson that the African National Congress, the 102-year-old organization I represent here in Parliament, learnt in its long years of struggle was that of unity and inclusivity. Uniting the different ethnic groups from its founding in 1912 to working in the Congress alliance with the South African Indian Congress, the Colored People's Organization, and the White Congress of Democrats, the ANC forged non-racialism and respect for all South Africans. This unity and inclusivity is specifically stated in the Freedom Charter adopted in 1956 with its striking opening line, we, the people of South Africa, declare for all our country and the world to know that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. It is in the preamble of our Constitution of the Republic of South Africa that, and I quote, "We, the people of South Africa, believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity." And it is expressed in our National Development Plan, and I quote, "South Africa belongs to all its peoples. We, the people, belong to one another. We live the rainbow." I stated earlier that we need to learn about each other's heritage. We come from a past which specifically sought to prevent that. In order to justify, first of all, slavery, the enslaving of fellow human beings as mere property, and then colonization, the subjugation of indigenous people and the occupation of their land, the European mind had to propagate myths such as the superiority of Europeans and their culture and history, and the inferiority of the peoples of Africa. This continued in the era of apartheid, which was built on the myth that white people were superior to black people. Part of this process was the concealment of the existence of advanced African societies, such as Mapungubwe. The propagation of myths, such as the assertion that Great Zimbabwe couldn't possibly have been built by indigenous people, but must have been built by Phoenicians, and other such claims that the Europeans and Bantu-speaking people arrived in South Africa at the same time, which I think we've heard before in this House. How much of this mindset, the stereotyping, still dominates some of our thinking, even subconsciously? One of the problems of our society, and in this regard I refer particularly to people of my own background, white middle-class South Africans, is a belief in their own cultural superiority, that their way of doing things and their outlook and values are the only ones that are correct. Our struggle for a South Africa united in its diversity is a struggle not just to learn about the past, but also not to forget it. We must never forget it. In our past, there was no justice in the justice system. It was a system of injustice which upheld and defended the apartheid state. Constitutional safeguards and rights, which we consider the norm today, were non-existent under the previous regime. During the 1960s to 1980s, many people were detained without trial, often tortured, and many of them died in detention. Many people tell their stories of how they came to dread nighttime approaching, as this was when the security forces were likely to strike. And I want to quote from Oswald Mbuyiseni Mchali's poem, Nightfall in Soweto, that, "Nightfall comes like a dreaded disease. Where is my refuge? Where am I safe? Not in my matchbox house, where I barricade myself against nightfall. I tremble at his crunching footsteps. I quake at his deafening knock at the door. Open up, he barks like a rabid dog, thirsty for my blood. Nightfall, nightfall, you are my mortal enemy. But why were you ever created? Why can't it be daytime? Daytime forevermore." I never actually did national service, thank you. I don't know who asked that question. I avoided conscription, unlike, I think, most of the members of this House. Apartheid laws were dehumanizing, and the so-called security legislation was draconian in nature. Many would say that because of this, our country's story must be one of bitterness and resentment. But we can proudly and humbly say that this is not the case. But one of the problems we face as a country is that of deliberately forgetting. Even though the National Party government was kept in power by white votes, and I think the Honourable Van der Walt, one of the previous speakers, was a National Party councillor, it is very difficult today to find a single person who supported apartheid.
Order, members.
Everyone in South Africa, in particular on this side of the House, is in love with our first president, Nelson Mandela. But it was only a few years earlier that white South Africans, particularly these on this side of the House, regarded him as a terrorist who was trying to destroy white civilization. I spoke earlier of the Freedom Charter. Now, just about everybody, with the exception of the Freedom Front Plus and the PAC, supports the Freedom Charter, including the people here. But right up until the dawn of democracy, most white South Africans regarded it as a communist document, didn't you, Honourable Van der Walt? And because of state propaganda, they regarded communism as particularly evil. The contrast between our country's past and future is stark and dramatic. We've struggled and we've overcome. We've succeeded in building a constitutional democracy that's often hailed as one of the most progressive in the world. We've gone from a brutal and dehumanizing regime of control to building a society based on human dignity, freedom, and equality. We've made significant progress towards eradicating inequality and injustice and building a more equal society. Since the advent of democracy, government has consistently worked on improving the lives of all. Today, more people have access to safe drinking water, and more than 12.5 million people now have a place to call home, as government has invested more than 100 billion rand in building new homes since 1994. There have been major improvements in access to healthcare since 1994 as well, and we have more children going to school, with the number of children enrolled for grade R increasing year on year. I gather from the heckling on this side that that's something they want to challenge. This does not mean there are no challenges, and particularly poverty, unemployment, and inequality. It means that the gains we've made outweigh the challenges that remain. And we must take pride in the fact that we have made massive gains in our society and towards building a more equal South Africa. Chairperson, heritage is also about social cohesion. In its 1992 document called Ready to Govern, the ANC Policy Guidelines for a Democratic South Africa, it states that, and I quote, "We have to develop a truly South African vision of our country, one which is not distorted by the prejudices and sectarianism that has guided viewpoints on race and gender in the past. We have to rely on the wisdom, life experiences, talents, and know-how of all South Africans, women and men. There can be no apartheid in finding solutions to the problems created by apartheid." So what does it mean to be South African? I've been asked to deliver a lecture tomorrow at the University of Northwest in Mafeking in honor of the late Professor of Law, Professor Carmen Nathan. In reading about Professor Nathan's life, I was struck by the following, and you should really listen to this, you might benefit from it. Professor Nathan was a white, English-speaking South African who'd worked for a long time in the Northwest. She'd mentioned in her will that she wanted a Tswana Jewish burial, and her wish was granted when she passed away, with a funeral that she probably herself would not have imagined. Over 4,000 people showed up at the village of Motswedi in the Northwest Province. The village is rather remote, being about 70 kilometers from the nearest larger town, which is Zeerust, so the rabbi had to be flown in by helicopter. Professor Nathan was buried in Motswedi, along to the sounds of both a Tswana gospel choir and the saying of traditional Jewish prayers. And so every person in this country has their own unique South African story to tell. Chairperson, I conclude. What is heritage? Heritage is memory. Heritage is what we leave behind when we are no longer here. The question really is, what do we leave behind? What are you going to leave behind, Honourable Member of the DA? Perhaps the very best we can leave behind is an unwavering commitment to the Constitution and its guarantees. We must also leave as our legacy a steadfast belief in democracy and the rule of law. We must entrench a culture of and respect for human rights and the dignity, freedom, and equality of all people. We must respect the institutions of our democracy, one of which is Parliament, and it's a very central institution. And in this regard, I'd like to reflect on certain recent events and the conduct of both some members of this House and commentators. The Speaker of the National Assembly has recently been subjected to considerable criticism. When the President was in the Assembly to answer questions, the Speaker was criticized by commentators, such as Judith February, for not allowing an additional follow-up question after the 4 had been asked. However, the fact of the matter is that the rules of the National Assembly do not allow for this, and the Speaker has absolutely no discretion in this regard. Surely one would expect that people familiarize themselves with parliamentary rules before expressing expert opinions on it. Yesterday, the Speaker was accused by a whip of the DA of taking instructions from Luthuli House because she did not force the Deputy President to answer a specific question. However, the same member and his chief whip sitting next to him both know full well that the rules and the practice do not provide for this. Members of the executive must respond to questions but there is no policing how they respond. It seems the issue of a selective memory that I was speaking about earlier continues to this day. Even Tuesday's motion of no confidence debate was a desperate attempt by the desperate alliance to reclaim the opposition initiative from the EFF by attacking the Speaker without having anything really substantial to say. And the problem is that in attacking the legitimacy of Parliament for short-term gain, we're damaging the pillars which support our democracy.
Honourable
And
Deputy
reference has
Minister.
been made.
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Yeah, on the point of order, can the Deputy Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, confine himself to the heritage? Because this is a topic that we're talking about.
Honourable Member, take your seat.
I
Continue,
was talking
Deputy
about
Minister.
the need to protect institutions, and what is interesting is the relationship between the EFF and the DA. They talk about the DA being EFF light, or maybe even EFF white. We've fought too long and too hard to make a mockery of this institution. Obstructing speakers by taking perpetual points of order when a member feels they are being insulted, and then the following day insulting someone and refusing to withdraw the insult is showing disrespect to Parliament. And walking out of its proceedings is being fundamental disrespectful to the struggle of each and every life lost during the struggle. Where is the sense of history? Where's the sense of dignity? And I note that the EFF, the Honourable Chief Whip, admits that he did show the middle finger to the Deputy President. That's on your website. The liberation struggle has taught us that the impossible is possible despite the odds. We've learned that achieving a desired goal takes time, enormous commitment, and courage. We've learned that as long as inequality exists, our work is not done. We've learned that we are better together, united in our diversity, celebrating that we are all children of the African soil. I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Order, members. That concludes the debate and the business of the joint sitting. The joint sitting will now rise.